Chapter 840. Looking at the tunnels in front of him, Ouyang Shua asked, "Which one?" "There." The lovelorn bandit commander pointed to a tunnel in the west. The players of the Breeze Pavilion hadn't forgotten their crushing defeat in Dali. They naturally held a grudge against the Shao alliance that guarded Dali's satellite city. They were still looking forward to a battle in the underground world. Ouyang Shua didn't expose them. The tunnels were winding and undulating. The highest parts were 4 to 5 meters high, and the lowest parts had to be bent down to pass. The width of the tunnels was different, and the light wasn't strong. It was easy to panic. Although the open space was the monster area, it didn't mean there were no monsters in the tunnels. Along the way, they encountered large bats from time to time. There were also rats moving on the ground. These small animals weren't small at all. They were as big as puppies and extremely fierce. They had sharp fangs and red eyes. These guys hid in the darkness and didn't know when to launch a sneak attack. Experts like Ouyang Shua were fine, but the soldiers of the Divine Martial Guard suffered. They were used to fighting on the battlefield, but they lacked experience in dealing with these troubles. Fortunately, the Divine Martial Guard was strong and well-equipped. Although they were a bit embarrassed, there were no casualties. Su Chu frowned when he saw this. The Divine Martial Guard was the personal guard of the Emperor. They were the special forces of the special forces. They shouldn't only know how to fight on the battlefield. They should be used to fighting in any form and in any environment. Not to mention such a small animal. Even if it was facing a divine beast or a ghost, it should still be calm and composed. After coming down, I have to carry out special training for the Divine Martial Guard, Su Chu thought. After Wang Feng resigned as the commander of the Divine Martial Guard, Su Chu had been leading the Divine Martial Guard. Looking at the situation, Ouyang Shua didn't have any intention of appointing a new commander. After walking for about an hour, there was a burst of light in front of them. They had reached another open space. However, this open space had been cleared by the Blood Shadow Alliance, so there weren't any strong monsters. Ouyang Shua didn't stop and ordered them to continue exploring. The Divine Martial Guard carried a large number of military rations. They didn't need to return to resupply, so they could use this opportunity to gain experience. How could Ouyang Shua not notice the problem that Su Chu saw? They walked and stopped. By the afternoon, they had passed 3 open spaces. The terrain of each clearing was different. There were forests, grasslands, deserts, and swamps. Fortunately, this was a game, and all the rules were decided by Gaia. They could design the game however they wanted. In reality, it was impossible to have such an underworld that violated the laws of nature. Just when Ouyang Shua's group was about to arrive at an empty space, the sounds of intense battle suddenly came from ahead. "Are there any other players here?" Ouyang Shua asked. The previous empty space was the unexplored area of the Blood Shadow Alliance, and there shouldn't be any fights. This shouldn't be the case. The bandit marshal was also puzzled. He said Alliance Master has already given the order. In order to protect the Lord's safety, the entire west side has been temporarily cleared. I'll go take a look and see who has the gall to commit such a crime. Does he not want to stay in Satellite Town anymore? Hearing this, Ouyang Shua frowned slightly. It was not that he was disgusted by the actions of the Blood Shadow Alliance. After all, the bright moon illuminates the river was out of consideration for his safety. It was understandable that they had different standpoints. What he was disgusted with was the arrogance that the members of the Blood Shadow Alliance unknowingly revealed. It had only been a few days, but they were already so arrogant. This was not a good sign. However, this person was not his subordinate, so Ouyang Shua could not say anything. After a while, the bandit marshal returned with a faint look of excitement. He said, "Lord, it's not players. It's a pack of gray wolves attacking a group of NPCs. Gray wolves were a type of gold-ranked monster that was commonly seen in the underworld. As they lived in packs, they had great destructive power. Even an elite team would have to be careful when dealing with them. The Wolf King of the Wolf Pack was at least a dark gold-ranked monster, or even a high-level spirit beast. It was extremely ferocious. The underworld did not only have wild monsters. There were various signs that indicated that there were humans living in the underworld. According to Gaia's settings, these races hid in the underworld to live, either because they were avoiding goods, or because of natural disasters, or purely by coincidence. They multiplied and took root in the underworld for generations. To be able to encounter NPCs meant that there was a high chance of receiving a mission. It was no wonder that the bandit marshal was excited. Ouyang Shua's expression changed. He said, "Let's go take a look." After passing through the tunnel, the area before them suddenly opened up. The open space here was a hilly landscape. Further away, there was a small river meandering through it. As such, this place was not as barren as other places. It was actually lush with rarely seen water plants. It was no wonder there were wolf packs around. However, due to the lack of light, the weeds were not verdant. Instead, they appeared to be a deep dark green. On a small hill in the middle of the hill stood a group of aborigines dressed in hemp clothes. They held simple weapons in their hands. There were about 11 or 12 of them, and all of them were wounded. These aborigines were clearly different from the above-ground residents. They were generally thinner, and their skin was gray in color. The most eye-catching thing was that they had tattoos of a bear's head on their chests. They looked ferocious and domineering. At a glance, there was a hint of savagery. The interest in Ouyang Shua's eyes intensified. He gestured for the divine guards to kill those gray wolves. Upon receiving the order, the divine guards took out their gods' crossbows and quickly got into formation. It was a volley of shots. The gray wolves were also ferocious. They did not immediately die under such a powerful crossbow attack. Under the command of the Wolf King, the gray wolves abandoned the aborigines on the small hill and pounced at the divine guards. The divine guards were not afraid. After another volley of shots, they took out their tang sabers and prepared to fight the gray wolves in close combat. Seeing this, Ouyang Shua's fighting spirit was aroused. He took out his demonic spear and charged forward. Seeing this, Su Chu quickly followed with his personal guards. As the scale of the army expanded, Ouyang Shua rarely had the chance to personally go to the battlefield. The demonic bloodline in his body was slightly restless, revealing a thirst for blood. Ouyang Shua took advantage of the situation and charged into the wolf pack with his demonic spear. He was invincible. Although he did not go to the battlefield, his martial arts skills had never fallen behind. Together with Su Chu, a killing god, he set off a monstrous massacre in the wolf pack. Seeing this, the bandit marshal and the other members of the Blood Shadow Alliance could not help. The bandit marshal turned his head and said, "I've long heard that the Lord's martial strength can be ranked in the top 3 even among the adventurer players. I thought it was an exaggeration, but now it seems that it is true. I'm afraid the wolf pack in front of us will not be able to force the Lord to use his true strength." Fierce. The team members all sighed with emotion. This was what they were playing. While they were talking, the wolf pack had already suffered heavy casualties. Seeing this, the Wolf King in the distance decisively ordered to retreat. Wolves were very cunning animals and would not fight to the end. Ouyang Shua put away his demonic spear and looked at the mountain not far away. The group of people were also tactful. 2 people came down. The leader was a middle-aged man. Seeing the equipment of the divine martial guards, a trace of reverence appeared in his eyes. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for your help, Lord." Ouyang Shua smiled and waved his hand. "Let's go see the wounded first." He saw a man lying on the mountaintop. He seemed to have been seriously injured. When they reached the mountaintop, they saw the man lying on the ground with a pale face. He was not far from death. Although the surrounding natives were all injured, they did not care about their injuries at all. They surrounded the man with anxious expressions. This man must be a very core member of their team. Ouyang Shua frowned. He took out a medicinal pill from his storage pouch and fed it to the man. This medicinal pill was made by Bien, Quebec. It could save a life at a critical moment. Sure enough, after taking the medicinal pill, the man's complexion obviously improved. His breathing also became calm. Seeing this, the surrounding natives were in an uproar. Ouyang Shua's expression was not relaxed. Just now, he had already sensed that this injured man was not a brute. There was true qi circulating in his body. Moreover, this aura was very familiar to Ouyang Shua. "Help him sit properly," Ouyang Shua ordered. Seeing this, The natives did not dare to be negligent. They carefully helped the injured man up. Ouyang Shua sat cross-legged. He pushed his palms forward and pressed them on the injured man's back. The golden true chi in his body surged. He separated a small amount and slowly moved it through his palms into the injured man's meridians. As soon as it came into contact with the injured man, the golden true chi became excited. Ouyang Shua's heart thumped. This confirmed his previous guess. This injured man's cultivation technique was actually the same as the inner canon of the Yellow Emperor. He became more and more curious about the origin of this group of natives. Otherwise, Ouyang Shua would not have wasted his precious true chi on an NPC. Under Ouyang Shua's treatment, the almost exhausted true chi in the injured man's body slowly flowed and began to repair itself. Finally, the man was pulled back from the brink of death. If he wanted to fully recover, he would have to slowly adjust his breathing and recuperate. After a while, the injured man woke up. When he saw Ouyang Shua, he cupped his hands in gratitude. His eyes were filled with bewilderment. He muttered, "Emperor, what?" Ouyang Shua asked. The man clenched his teeth and asked, "May I ask, benefactor, are you cultivating the inner canon of the Yellow Emperor?" "That's right." The man became even more excited when he got a definite answer. He was not the only one. The surrounding natives also looked at Ouyang Shua. The previous vigilance in their eyes was gone. They became incomparably respectful. Ouyang Shua asked tentatively, "Are you the descendants of the Yellow Emperor?" "Yes." "Then, why did you appear underground?" The man sighed. With a complicated expression, he said, "It's a long story. Would benefactor be willing to come to my place for a chat?" Ouyang Shua was exactly what he was looking for. He said, "Then, I'll have to trouble you." The man was overjoyed. He ordered his men to pack up the prey and prepare to set out. When Ouyang Shua saw this, he asked the divine martial guards to help him collect the corpses of the gray wolves. This could be considered a greeting gift to the man's tribe. Under the natives' lead, the group passed through one tunnel after another. After walking for 3 hours, they finally arrived at a heavily guarded clearing. Of course, there was not much difference between night and day in the underground world. The clearing here was even more vast. One could not see the end of it. If it were placed on the surface, it would be a proper basin. There were valleys, grasslands, fields, streams, and even forests. It was no wonder that this group of natives had built their tribe here. It was indeed a rare place with good feng shui. Chapter 841. After the Yellow Emperor's tribe defeated Qiyu in the Battle of Zhuolu, they established themselves in the Central Plains. A branch of the tribe was ordered by the Yellow Emperor to pursue the remnants of the Qiyu tribe in the south and moved all the way to the southern border. Unexpectedly, during the migration, the ground suddenly caved in, forming a huge pit. In one night, the entire tribe was buried underground. When the disaster came, more than 70% of the tribe died tragically. The survivors survived in the mysterious underground world and tenaciously multiplied for 1,000 years. In order to trace their roots, this group of underground tribes called themselves the Yuxiong tribe and used the bear as their totem. They relied on the Yellow Emperor's cultivation techniques, beast-taming techniques, and hunting techniques to gradually gain a foothold in the underground world. After the collapse of the ground, the entrance to the underground world was sealed again. The Yuxiong tribe had no hope of going out. Only when the satellite city was opened and the entrance to the underground world reappeared in the wilderness did Ouyang Shua and his party meet the Yuxiong tribe. Ouyang Shua was fortunate enough to have such a fortuitous encounter on his first trip to the underground world. When Ouyang Shua and his party arrived at the Yuxiong tribe, they were warmly welcomed. The injured middle-aged man was the tribe's hunting captain, whose status was second only to the patriarch and the great elder. After learning that Ouyang Shua cultivated the authentic inner canon of the Yellow Emperor, even the patriarch couldn't help but be moved and said with emotion, "I didn't expect that I would be able to see the Emperor's successor before I die." Ouyang Shua smiled and briefly introduced Shanghai City and the entrance to the underground world. Then, he sincerely said, "Since we are fated, Why don't you bring your people to Shanghai City and settle down there? The patriarch was somewhat moved, but he shook his head and said, I appreciate the emperor's good intention. According to the records of our tribe, our ancestors have always wanted to return to the surface, but there is no way to do so. It's just that in our generation, after 1,000 years, we have already gotten used to the underground life. I'm afraid that we won't be able to adapt to it if we go up. Ouyang Shuo agreed. He thought for a while and said, if that's the case, I won't force you. However, the land belongs to the emperor. This underground world is still within the borders of Shanghai City. As long as the chief agrees to officially submit to the rule of Shanghai City, I can arrange for more advanced farming techniques and production tools to be sent over. I can also arrange for generals to train warriors for the tribe, as well as weapons and armor to ensure the safety of the tribe. In addition, I also suggest that we send some children and women up there so that they can slowly adapt to life on the surface. Chief, you don't want the Yuxiong tribe, the descendants of the Yellow Emperor, to live in darkness forever, do you? The patriarch, grand elder, and the middle-aged man looked at each other. Ouyang Shuo's proposal was very tempting. Although the warriors of the Yuxiong tribe were not weak, the monsters in the underground world were stronger. Every time the hunting team went hunting, there would be casualties. Furthermore, there was not enough care underground, and the crops grown in the ground were unable to grow into preserved fruits. Every winter was a severe test for the entire tribe. Hunger had become their natural enemy. Ouyang Shuo then said, you still don't know? The Yellow Emperor had also appeared in the wilderness, but he lived in seclusion. What I want to say is that as long as we go up to the surface, we will meet the Yellow Emperor one day. The three of them became even more excited. They looked at each other and nodded heavily. The old chief said, the Emperor's grace is equivalent to giving me a new life. How dare I not serve him? With that said, the three of them stood up and solemnly bowed. Ouyang Shuo's face lit up with joy, and he heard the system notification. System notification. Congratulations to player Not Say you have closed for successfully subduing the Yuxiong tribe, a remnant tribe of the underground world. You are specially rewarded with 10,000 reputation points as encouragement. System notification. Congratulations to player Not Say you have closed for subduing the Mountain Barbarian tribe, Li tribe, High Mountain tribe, and the remnant tribe of the underground world. Nation Founding Mission 1. Submission of the 4 barbarians completed. Ouyang Shuo was overjoyed. There was a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. He had never thought that an impromptu exploration of the underground world could unexpectedly complete Nation Founding Mission 1. How delightful! At night, the Yuxiong tribe hosted a banquet for Ouyang Shuo and his party. There was a special dish on the table that attracted Ouyang Shuo's attention. It was a thick soup. Besides wild beast meat, there was also a kind of mushroom, which looked very much like the enoki mushroom in the real world. Ouyang Shuo picked up a handful. It was smooth and fragrant. It was undoubtedly the enoki mushroom. Ouyang Shuo was shocked. It was the first time he had eaten such mushrooms in the game. Even in Shanghai City, where there were countless delicacies, he had never seen such mushrooms. Could it be wild? The dark and damp underground world was indeed suitable for the growth of wild mushrooms. Ouyang Shuo turned to the old chief beside him and asked, Chief, were these mushrooms picked in the wild? The old chief smiled with a proud expression and said, My lord, these mushrooms are indeed found in the wild. The ones we're eating now are grown in the cave. Grown by ourselves? Ouyang Shuo's interest was piqued. Yes. The old chief stroked his beard and said with a smile, Speaking of mushrooms, there is a story. According to the genealogy, the tribe encountered an unprecedented food crisis 300 years ago. They could only eat wild vegetables and mountain mushrooms. Especially mushrooms, they are one of the staple foods. However, mushrooms grow fast and wither fast, and they are not easy to store. A member of the tribe suddenly thought of transplanting the mushrooms in the wild into the cave. After experimenting for more than a year, he finally succeeded. In our generation, the mushroom planting technique is very mature, and there are many kinds of mushrooms. Especially the enoki mushroom mentioned by my lord It is a great delicacy. Ouyang Shuo was silent. Could it be that this is the black technology of the underground world? Thinking of this, Ouyang Shuo asked, "Old chief, is it convenient to teach this technique to outsiders? I can let the people on the surface see that even the underground world has its own unique techniques." The old chief smiled and said, "My lord is too kind. Please wait for a moment." Saying this, he stood up and left. After a while, the old chief returned with a piece of sheepskin in his hand. After tanning, it could also be used as paper. The genealogy of the Yuxiong tribe was recorded with this sheepskin. The old chief passed the sheepskin to Ouyang Shuo. Ouyang Shuo took a look, and the attributes immediately appeared. Underground Mushroom Planting Technique Manual. After use, the user can master all kinds of mushroom planting techniques. At this moment, a system notification sounded in Ouyang Shuo's ears. System notification. Congratulations to player. Don't say you have no clothes. You have obtained a new technique, Underground Mushroom Planting Technique Manual. 1/3 of the nation establishment mission, Vientiane Renewal, is completed. Please continue to work hard. Oh, it's really not bad. Ouyang Shuo was overjoyed. It was double happiness. He did not expect that his trip to the underground world would solve the two major problems of the nation establishment mission. It was truly a worthwhile trip. From the looks of it, Gaia's design of the underground world was not as simple as a place for adventurers to level up. The mysterious underground world had countless mysterious races living there. They possessed all kinds of mystical skills and black technology. It was a good supplement for the wild world. Ouyang Shuo thought that Shanghai City would increase its exploration of the underground world. There might be some surprises in the future. The underground world was becoming more interesting. The next day, Ouyang Shuo and his party stayed at the Yuxiong tribe for a day. The old chief and the others wanted to choose 100 young men and women and children from the tribe to stay with Ouyang Shuo in Shanghai City. On the 9th of April, Ouyang Shuo and his party returned without any accidents. That night, Ouyang Shuo spent the night in the satellite city. During that time, he chatted with Bright Moon, Illuminating River, Mechanical Shadow Fox, and Dream Cloud's Devourer. They discussed the development of the underground world. Ouyang Shuo proposed to set up a reward pool of 100,000 gold coins, be it Blood Shadow Alliance members or other adventurers in the satellite city. As long as they found a subterranean remnant tribe and reported it, they would be rewarded with 10,000 gold coins. He believed that there would be brave men with such great rewards. As long as they found a subterranean remnant tribe, the 100,000 gold coins would be well spent. Other than rewarding adventurers who had fortuitous encounters, Ouyang Shuo also proposed to set up an underground world mapping project. He called upon all the adventurers in the satellite city to participate in the mapping. As long as they contributed to the mapping, they would be rewarded. The rewards were not limited to gold coins, be it cultivation technique manuals, weapons, or equipment. As long as the map provided was valuable, Ouyang Shuo would not be stingy with the rewards. Ouyang Shuo's intention was to leave the two projects to the Blood Shadow Alliance. The Bright Moon Illuminates the River didn't even think about it and immediately nodded in agreement. Shanghai City was paying, and as long as they put in some effort, they would be able to expand their influence in the satellite cities. While chatting, Ouyang Shuo hinted at Bright Moon Illuminating River to restrain the members of the Blood Shadow Alliance. He told them not to become arrogant and think that the Blood Shadow Alliance was the overlord of the satellite city. If that's the case, I'll be very disappointed, Ouyang Shuo said. Bright Moon Illuminating River and the other two had grave expressions. They had been preoccupied with the reorganization of the guild and did not notice the change in the mood of the Blood Shadow Alliance members. Don't worry, I'll take care of it, Bright Moon Illuminating River said. Ouyang Shuo nodded and did not say anything else. This kind of matter should not be overdone. On the 10th of April, Ouyang Shuo and his group prepared to return to Shanghai City. Not far from the Castellan Mansion, Ouyang Shuo met two people on the street. They were Liangshan Mercenary Group's leader, Song Pu, and Bloody Rose, Zhang Ziyue. Speaking of which, This was the first time Ouyang Shuo met the two of them in this life. Time had changed. Shenbuhai had already told Ouyang Shuo that the Liangshan mercenary group had moved to the satellite city. At this time, the two of them were looking at Ouyang Shuo and his group with respect and curiosity like the other players. Ouyang Shuo's heart moved. He took out a dark gold long sword from his storage pouch and gave it to Su Chu to give to Zhang Ziyue. Su Chu received the order and quickly walked to Zhang Ziyue. He said, "This is a gift from my lord." "For me?" Zhang Ziyue was surprised. "My lord said that it was fate that brought you together, so he specially gave this sword to you. There's no other meaning." Su Chu did not say much. He turned around and returned to the group. Ouyang Shuo saw this and nodded to Zhang Ziyue. He led the group and disappeared on the street, leaving Zhang Ziyue standing there in a daze. Song Pu, who was beside her, looked at her inquisitively. Chapter 842, 12th of April, Shanghai City. Ouyang Shuo was in a good mood as he had made a breakthrough in the founding mission. He had given the sword to Zhang Ziyue in the satellite city because she had told Ouyang Shuo in his previous life that she had always wanted a dark gold sword. To them at that time, a dark gold weapon was still a luxury. Hence, at the moment he saw Zhang Ziyue, Ouyang Shuo's desire to take revenge on the Liangshan mercenary group suddenly faded. His mental demons seemed to have disappeared. Let nature take its course. Ouyang Shuo no longer wanted to take revenge on the Liangshan mercenary group. Just as Thunderous Sword Chi had said, since there was a barrier between them, they might as well forget each other. To overcome this mental demon before the founding of the country was also the end of a cycle for Ouyang Shuo. The game world of Gaia had undergone earth-shattering changes compared to his previous life. The benefits of Ouyang Shuo's rebirth had also gradually dissipated. However, this experience had created an extraordinary him, as well as a Shanghai city that could be called great. With these 2 points, Ouyang Shuo was confident that he would be able to overcome all the difficulties and obstacles in the way. As soon as Ouyang Shuo returned to Shanghai city, he received another piece of good news. Under the calculations of the Federation's top mathematicians day and night, they had successfully solved the 10th calculation of the 10 calculations of heavenly secrets, achieving an academic breakthrough. The industry department was also progressing smoothly. The Emperor had already been tested in the North Seaport. It will be completed in a few more days. As such, the second founding mission, Myriad Renewal, was basically completed. Ouyang Shuo was in high spirits. After a discussion with Jiang Shang and the other ministers, they decided on the 18th of April as an auspicious day to officially hold the coronation ceremony and establish the country. Before that, the discussion of the country's name had already been settled. After a discussion with the ministers, Ouyang Shuo personally decided that the new country's name would be Xia, the Great Xia Dynasty. Xia was the beginning of the dynasty, the origin of China. It was the most orthodox. On the day the country's name was established, the Chamberlain of Dependencies sent out more than 100 envoys to various large factions to deliver invitations to the Great Xia Dynasty's coronation ceremony. Ouyang Shuo's idea was to send the invitations first regardless of whether they came. Ouyang Shuo wanted to see how Di Chun and the others would deal with this. Even members of the Yanhuang Alliance would receive an invitation. The founding of Shanghai City was a great honor for the China region. When the news came out, the world was in an uproar. If not for the fact that Mountain Sea City had long since announced that it would restrict players from entering Mountain Sea City to ensure the city's security during the coronation ceremony, Mountain Sea City wouldn't have allowed players to enter the city. Most likely, at least half of the players from the 9 king cities would swarm into Shanghai City to witness this grand moment. Hearing that the name of the country was Xia, the children of China were even more excited and could not support it. A congratulatory post was created on the forum to celebrate the establishment of Shanghai City and the birth of the Great Xia Dynasty. As soon as the post was posted, the number of replies instantly exceeded 1,000. Within 5 minutes, it had exceeded 10,000. In just one day, the number of replies had exceeded 5 million. Ordinary players weren't the only ones who replied. Guild leaders, Chamber of Commerce leaders, lords, and so on also responded. What was even more unbelievable was that even foreign players came to congratulate him. The foreign feudal lords who had sent their blessings were all commoners. They were far away from Shanghai City, so they were unable to personally travel to Shanghai City to congratulate it. As such, they could only express their support for Shanghai City through this method. After the previous commotion, Silver Hand had gradually entered the sights of the feudal lords. Among the congratulatory crowd were a few Chinese feudal lords that Ouyang Shua was very interested in, including the Australian feudal lord Vera, the New Zealand feudal lord Jason Chong, and so on. The destination of Ouyang Shua's next voyage was Oceania, where there was an ancient civilization that was comparable to the Atlantean civilization waiting for him to explore. Australia and New Zealand also had the resources that Shanghai City needed, so the two sides had a basis for cooperation. Avera and Jason Chang's congratulations undoubtedly made Ouyang Shua's mood better. Unknowingly, Shanghai City had already made a name for itself in the world, and players all over the world looked favorably upon it. Under such circumstances and in such a special atmosphere, would Di Chun and the others still dare to risk universal condemnation and attempt to sabotage the founding of Shanghai City? Ouyang Shua waited and waited. After receiving the invitation, Feng Qiuhuang, Siege Lion, Swan Yi, Xiang Yu, Queen of Atlantis, and other friends that Ouyang Shua had previously confirmed that they would be attending the coronation ceremony. Queen Kalia of Atlantis even sent a letter to Ouyang Shua, saying that she would bring him a big surprise on the 17th of April. Every time a leader confirmed their attendance, Ouyang Shua's mission window would receive a response. On the 14th of April, the mission window had changed to Founding Mission 3 Congratulations from all sides, 42/50ths. The situation was a little more difficult than Ouyang Shua had expected. Basically, all the neutral lords had yet to give a positive response. There was even a lord that Ouyang Shua was confident in, but surprisingly, he did not give a response. It seemed that the Hand of Silver had still come forward to stop them. They really are like ghosts that won't go away. Ouyang Shua was in no hurry. The Chamberlain of Dependencies was still active, and no one knew what the situation would be until the last moment. The trend of the times was not something that the Hand of Silver could stop. On the 15th of April, a milestone event happened in the China region. At 7 o'clock in the evening, produced by Shanghai Entertainment Holdings, produced by City Toppling Studios, and distributed by Gaia, the first 5D movie in the wilderness, Country and Beauty, was officially released. That afternoon, Gaia opened a special viewing section. Unlike reality, there were no physical theaters in the game, so Gaia could provide unlimited private rooms. It was definitely a supreme enjoyment. Those who liked to watch movies in groups could also apply for a private room combination in the viewing section, instantly forming a viewing hall or home theater for their friends and family. Compared to reality, it was much cooler. Without a physical theater, there were naturally no shackles on the screening rate. It was completely 100% screening. Of course, Gaia was not doing charity work. For the entire service, Gaia would take 20% of the box office revenue as service fees. Compared to the blood-sucking in reality, it was much better. The ticket price was set at 12 silver coins. In the fourth year of Gaia's inflation, it was a very affordable price. After more than half a month of intensive publicity, Ouyang Shua's personal appearance, Wu Qingqing's celebrity effect, and the publicity stunt of the first 5D movie in the game, it was already full of topics before the movie was even released. The beauty of the country and country was Wu Qingqing's painstaking effort. After Mountains and Seas Entertainment Holdings was established, she assigned the best team to the production team. From the director, actors, to the cinematographer, martial arts director, costume, props, and art director, they were all top-notch. They gathered most of the big shots in the film industry. Compared to the solo efforts of City Toppling Studios in the previous life, it was not just a little bit better. Some of the main leads changed professions. In order to film the most realistic effect, they did not hesitate to commit suicide and change jobs to heroes or generals. Song Jia then invited the elite team of Snow Death, Rose, to quickly level them up. She did not hesitate to spend a lot of money to equip them with top-notch equipment and martial arts manuals. As a result, the main lead did not need a martial arts stunt double. The effect was extraordinary. The handling of the details in the entire movie reached a level that was almost harsh. Like Ouyang Shua, Song Jia, the producer, also had obsessive-compulsive disorder. If she wanted to do it, she had to do it to the extreme. During the filming, many of the war scenes were taken from the Yunnan and Lingnan Wars. The Eastern Fence sword sect participated in the entire production of the war, and the scene was extremely explosive. Many of the costumes in the movie were personally designed and made by Qing, a master tailor by Song Jia. Not only were they exquisite, but they were also full of original classical flavor. It could be said that this was definitely a work of conscience. On the night it was released, it was extremely popular. After watching it, the players were so excited that they couldn't sleep. They went to the forum to post their feelings and comments. This is a real 5D movie. I was there, and it scared me so much that I couldn't sleep. It's so realistic, and the scene is so beautiful. It's definitely a work of conscience. Country and Beauty is definitely the best Chinese movie I've ever seen, and it's a movie that only Chinese people can really understand. Only we can understand the cultural connotation in it. 1 word, cool. 2 words, very cool. 3 words, very cool. I didn't expect that a movie shot in the game could have such an effect. It's so cool. My blood is boiling, and I feel like I'm about to explode. I want to change my class. I want to be a hero. Country and Beauty is not just a blockbuster. It's a movie with a profound connotation. It shows the entanglement of power and beauty in China for the past 5,000 years, and it's very thought-provoking. Through Country and Beauty, I can already see the rise of the movie industry in the game. It's absolutely unstoppable. The article I posted on the Daily News will soon come true. That night, the topic of the game forum was basically dominated by Country and Beauty, and it was full of praises. Driven by countless players, the reputation of the movie skyrocketed. Under the encouragement of family, friends, and guild members, more and more people logged on to watch the movie. By midnight, the number of people watching the movie had exceeded 15 million. In his previous life, the total number of people watching Country and Beauty was only 20 million. Even after midnight, the enthusiasm of the players didn't diminish. That night was destined to be a sleepless one, especially for the people who made the movie. In the blink of an eye, it was already the 16th of April, and there was still no progress in the country's 3rd founding mission. No matter how the ambassadors from the Chamberlain of Dependencies tried to persuade them, the lords kept their mouths shut. They didn't refuse, nor did they agree. If they really couldn't gather 50 lords to congratulate them on the founding day, it would be embarrassing. Ouyang Shua's mood became somewhat gloomy. Even the popularity of Country and Beauty was diluted by this terrible mood. That morning, Shanghai City welcomed 3 impressive ambassadors, and the news they brought made Ouyang Shua extremely excited. Chapter 843. The 3 envoys represented the Yellow Emperor tribe, the Yin Emperor tribe, and the Shang royal family. They were secluded factions that had formed deep ties with Shanghai City on the battle map. Who would have thought that the establishment of Shanghai City would actually alarm the 3 great ancient tribes? The descendants of Yin and Huang were honored. The 3 envoys indicated that although the Yellow Emperor, the Yin Emperor, and the Shang King could not come personally, they would arrange for their ministers to bring gifts to congratulate the great Xia dynasty. Just as they finished speaking, Ouyang Shua's mission column changed to Founding Mission 3. Congratulations from all corners. 45/50ths. This meant that Gaia acknowledged the 3 ancient factions' congratulations. Ouyang Shua suppressed his excitement and sent the 3 envoys off. Before the envoy of the Yellow Emperor tribe left, he said to Ouyang Shua, "His Majesty the Yellow Emperor asked me to pass a message to you. He thanked you for taking care of the descendants of the Yellow Emperor. Also, although the mountain barbarians are descendants of Qiyu, they are also descendants of China. It is a great merit for you to subdue the mountain barbarians and ascend to the position of barbarian king. Ouyang Shua nodded and immediately understood. The three ancient tribes had come together because of the opportunities they had formed on the battle map. Ouyang Shua's welcoming of the Yu Xiong tribe from the underground world was also a huge plus. Others could not be envious of such an opportunity. As for the Yellow Emperor's attitude towards the mountain barbarians, it was a testament to the Emperor's magnanimity. With the Yellow Emperor's final verdict, the discrimination the Han people in the territory had against the mountain barbarians would completely disappear. After sending the envoy off, Ouyang Shua immediately called Shun Buhai and Zhang Yi over. He got the Shanghai guards to cooperate with the Chamberlain of Dependencies to secretly release the news of the Yellow Emperor, the Yin Emperor, and the Shang King coming to congratulate them. The world was shocked when the news was released. It had been 3 years since the end of the Battle of Zhuolu and the appearance of the Yin and Huang tribes in the wilderness. They had been living in seclusion, and no matter how the players searched, they could not find the seclusion of the two tribes. No one expected them to appear in such a high-profile manner because of Shanghai City. It truly shocked everyone. There was another heated discussion on the forums. It even overshadowed the hottest topic of the past 2 days, country and beauty, and once again topped the trending list. The founding of Shanghai City could be said to be the hope of the masses, and it was the will of the heavens. At this time, the Yin-Huang alliance was in a rather awkward situation. They had used the name Yin-Huang in vain and boasted that they were the Yin-Huang alliance, but they had gone against the Yin and Huang emperors on the issue of establishing Shanghai City. It was truly a joke. The mockery on the forum was endless. What? Yin-Huang alliance? Emperor Yin and Emperor Huang only acknowledged Shanghai City. This is a slap in the face, a complete slap in the face. Yin-Huang alliance is too ashamed to show its face. Let's change it to narcissistic alliance. That's more appropriate. I suddenly feel that Yin-Huang alliance is so pitiful. They can't even keep their name. From how I see it, what the Yin-Huang alliance should do right now is to bring their gifts to Shanghai City. That way, they'll at least be on the same side as the Yin and Huang emperors. Otherwise, wouldn't that just be nonsense? Why does it feel like there's a sudden change? No one knew how Di Chun and the others would feel when faced with such accusations. However, as soon as the news spread, some neutral leaders immediately accepted Shanghai City's invitation. Ouyang Shua's quest panel was constantly jumping, and by the afternoon of the 16th, it had reached 49 50ths. He only needed one more to complete the third quest. At this moment, an explosive piece of news came out. Blood Red City's battle wolves had accepted Shanghai City's invitation and would represent the Yin-Huang alliance at the Great Xia Dynasty's coronation ceremony. As soon as the news came out, it caused another wave of uproar. It was one thing for players to tease on the forum, but no one expected that the Yin-Huang alliance would actually lower their heads. Although this was a small matter, it was very significant. It meant that the Yin-Huang alliance had officially admitted defeat to Shanghai City. It was likely that they had completely given up on trying to stop Shanghai City's rise and only wanted to protect themselves. From now on, the situation in China would definitely change. There was no longer any dispute as to who would be the leader of the China region. It would definitely be Ouyang Shua. When Ouyang Shua received the news, he thought even further than normal players. The Yin-Huang alliance made this decision after making an accurate judgment of the current situation, and in order to protect themselves, they made a huge change in strategy. By lowering their heads, they were actually retreating in order to advance. The Yin-Huang alliance was indeed an expert in politics. They were able to rise and fall with ease. The current situation in the wilderness was that Overlord City and Shanghai City were engaged in close combat, and a war could break out between the two sides at any time. If they really fought head-on, the Yin-Huang alliance did not have the confidence to win. Rather than that, they might as well choose to lower their heads to Shanghai City and admit that Shanghai City was the overlord of the China region. In exchange, Shanghai City would promise not to attack the Yin-Huang alliance, and both sides would temporarily cease hostilities. Under such a situation, if Shanghai City continued to attack the Yanhuan Alliance, the Yanhuan Alliance would probably have a whole set of methods to slander Shanghai City. The Yanhuan Alliance did not feel any pressure saying that Shanghai City only knew how to fight amongst themselves, and that their disciples would only exhaust the strength of the China region. Ouyang Shuo, indeed, did not want to go head-on with the Yanhuan Alliance at this point in time. The Great Xia dynasty's strategy for the next period of time was to focus on external forces and not internal forces. He did not forget the wild ambitions of the Japanese and other countries who had always been eyeing the China region. The Yanhuan Alliance definitely had an expert guiding them from behind the scenes, who could even be their elders. This move of retreating in order to advance cleverly resolved the crisis in front of them, and one precious time to accumulate their strength. It looked like they had lost face, but in reality, they had won their foundation. Perhaps in the future, they could divide the north and south of Shanghai City, which is a good choice for the Yanhuan Alliance. A good crisis PR, Ouyang Shuo commented. After thinking through the entire situation, Ouyang Shuo let out a sigh of relief. The Yanhuan Alliance, as temporary compromise, allowed Ouyang Shuo to focus on overseas battles. The Mediterranean Sea, Morocco, Annam, Australia, New Zealand, and other countries were all waiting for the Great Xia dynasty to explore and fight. The world was boundless. Why should they be content with just one corner? After the Battle Wolf Warrior accepted the invitation from Shanghai City, a large number of lords immediately accepted the invitation. On the night of the 16th, the mission panel had become Nation Building Mission 3. Congratulations from all sides. 57 50ths. When the Battle Wolf Warrior accepted the invitation, Ouyang Shuo heard the system notification. System notification. Congratulations to player. Don't say you have nothing to wear. Nation Building Mission 3. Congratulations from all sides. Has successfully gathered 50 lords to attend the ceremony. Mission accomplished. Congratulations to player. System notification. Congratulations to player. Don't say you have nothing to wear. All 3 nation-building missions have been completed. You can apply to establish a nation at any time and build an extraordinary foundation. Congratulations to player. With this, the coronation ceremony the day after tomorrow could finally proceed as scheduled. Ouyang Shuo secretly let out a sigh of relief. Speaking of which, the reason why Shanghai City was able to successfully complete the 3 nation-building missions was basically because they met the underground world's Yuxiong tribe. Just because of this, I have to do my best to help the Yuxiong tribe. Ouyang Shuo understood how to repay kindness. Ouyang Shuo was relieved, but some people were regretting to the point of their intestines turning green. Sky City, a small courtyard in the west of the city. Night fell, and the Federation president was enjoying the cool air in the backyard. Sky City was situated above the clouds, and when he raised his head to look at the starry sky, he saw the dazzling stars, the upside-down Milky Way, and all the stars in the sky. It was an indescribable enjoyment. Being here, it was as if he had become one with the entire starry sky, and he couldn't help but feel carefree. However, the Federation president wasn't in a carefree mood. On the contrary, he was a little depressed. I've really miscalculated this time. The old man smiled bitterly and shook his head. Gaia, who was standing not far away, gazed at the starry sky in the depths of the universe and didn't turn his head. The Federation president didn't mind, and he continued saying, I didn't expect this young friend to have such a wide network and such great fortune to be able to gain the appreciation of Emperor Yin and Emperor Huang. Now, we've made a wrong move, and we've lost everything. When the Federation president knew that the Silver Hand was resisting Shanghai City's nation-building mission, he was ready to take action. As long as he mobilized the power of the academies, he could immediately help Shanghai City complete the nation-building mission. However, the Federation president's thoughts were complicated, and he wanted to forgive Ouyang Shuo first. In his words, let's take this opportunity to temper Ouyang Shuo's character. It can also be considered a kind of experience for the young. According to the Federation president's arrangements, he was prepared to mobilize the power of the academies on the 17th of April, which was the day before the coronation ceremony, to help Shanghai City at the last moment. This was called sending charcoal in snowy weather. Who would have thought that this time he didn't expect that Emperor Yin and Emperor Huang would suddenly make such a move? Now, even without the help of the academies, Shanghai City had already completed the nation-building mission, and it was done very beautifully. This made the Federation president feel awkward. I'm afraid that our young friend is going to have a problem with us. The Federation president shook his head in amusement. Once again, it was proven that the game was not reality. Things in the game were ever-changing, and it wasn't something that he, the Federation president, could control. In the end, the problems in the game still had to be solved by the game itself. This was called learn from your mistakes. Whether it was the Yin-Huang alliance or the Silver Hand that had just revealed their whereabouts, they were all frustrated and at a disadvantage in the competition with the inconspicuous grassroots force of Shanghai City. One of the root problems was that they were still using the thinking of reality to solve the problems in the game. As it turned out, they were too arrogant. The game world, derived from Gaia, was far more complicated than they had imagined. Every time Shanghai City averted danger and counterattacked, it was all because of the foundation of the game. In this regard, even the Silver Hand, which was so powerful that it made the academies feel powerless, was far inferior. The Federation president looked up at the starry sky and finally said, "I think we have to do something." Chapter 844. Just as the Federation president was reflecting, a secret meeting was taking place on the other side of Sky City. The people in the meeting were the core members of the Silver Hands. There were a total of 5 people, known as the Silver Five Fingers. The 5 of them were all old men, and the youngest among them was already over 65 years old. They were the true masters behind the top 5 aristocratic families in the world, the true powerhouses of a region. The series of actions that the Silver Hands took against Shanghai City didn't alarm these 5 people, because as far as they were concerned, Ouyang Shuo was only a young fellow that had just come out into the world, and he wasn't worthy of their personal attention. This view was no different from that of the Federation president. However, as Shanghai City was about to be established, the situation had changed. That night, the 5 magnates finally sat together and seriously discussed their strategy against Shanghai City. The one who was speaking was the leader of the Silver Hands, codenamed Number 1. Number 1 said, "Now it seems that even with the help of other regions, the Yin-Huang alliance won't be able to suppress Shanghai City in the China region. My opinion is to adjust the strategy. As long as we destroy Shanghai City's overseas forces, we could trap Shanghai City in the China region. This way, no matter how powerful Shanghai City is, it won't be able to shake the foundation of the organization. What do you guys think?" The others didn't have any objections, but Number 2's face obviously darkened. He was Di Chen's grandfather. Number 1 smiled and said, "Number 2, you don't have to be depressed. The organization will continue to support what should be supported. No matter what, the organization needs the Yin-Huang alliance to hold Shanghai City in the China region. If you want technology, weapons, and talents, it's all just a matter of a word." Number 2 nodded silently. He could only blame his bad luck for encountering such a thing. Who asked Ouyang Shuo to appear in the China region? Speaking of which, Number 2 had met Ouyang Shuo once. It was during the first year of Gaia. Feng Xiaohuang wanted to leave the Feng family and go solo, and Ouyang Shuo rushed to Luo Feng City to support her. At that time, Ouyang Shuo was too arrogant, and Number 2 was not optimistic about him. Who would have thought that in just 3 years, the once arrogant youth had completely transformed into a calm and cunning king, pressuring the members of the Yin-Huang alliance to the point where they couldn't breathe. Even Feng Xiaohuang, this girl, soared into the sky and completely turned the situation around. She sat on the throne of the Feng clan's patriarch, which made these old men's jaws drop. Although his grandson Di Chun had already grown up, he was still nothing compared to him. This game is really tempering. Number 2 sighed with emotion. If Ouyang Shaw, the anomaly, didn't shine brightly, he might feel gratified for his grandson's growth. The Federation's original intention of designing Earth en lieu had basically been achieved. Fortunately, the five giants were people who were used to seeing big storms and big waves. Even though Ouyang Shuo was dazzling, he wasn't worthy of them taking the trouble to deal with him. After a brief mention, this matter was dropped. Number 1 finally said, prepare for the Mediterranean Sea as well. Don't let Shanghai City really rise overseas. If that's the case, I'm afraid we'll really be in trouble. Number 4 listened and nodded. He was the true overlord of the Mediterranean Sea. After discussing the matters of Shanghai City, the 5 old men started to talk about other matters. They talked about some interesting matters of the younger generation of their clans. It was a joyous and harmonious atmosphere. In comparison, they were more relaxed than the Federation president. Gaia Year 4, April 17th, Shanghai City. Tomorrow was the coronation ceremony. Shanghai City was already tense. The preparations for the various ceremonies were nearing completion. They were doing the final rehearsals and confirmations. The entire city was drowned in noble gold and festive red. The entire central street was covered in a thick red carpet. It was extremely shocking. Teams of Imperial Guards dressed in red armor patrolled the main streets. The central street, in particular, had been cleared a day in advance. Unauthorized people were not allowed to approach. The various landmarks in the city were also decorated with lanterns and streamers. It was much grander than the Lantern Festival. The citizens, merchants, and schools in the city took action spontaneously, decorating their respective territories in a festive manner. As for the main venue of the coronation ceremony, Royal City, it was even grander. Every main street was covered in red carpet, decorated with various auspicious patterns of fresh flowers. On every street in Royal City, there was an Imperial Guard standing guard every meter. There were also teams of Imperial Guards standing in front of the various government offices. The 3,000 Divine Martial Guards shouldered the heavy responsibility of guarding the palace. The atmosphere of the entire royal city was solemn and solemn. There was no room for trifling. The officials who came and went also subconsciously tightened their faces, not daring to speak loudly. The plaque of the Protectorate of Southern Border had been taken down and replaced with a plaque that read Summer Palace. A viewing platform was set up in the square in front of the Summer Palace. It was prepared for the military parade of the coronation ceremony. For the coronation ceremony tomorrow, Shanghai City would hold the grandest military parade in history. The Imperial Guard, the City Guard, the Dragon Stallion Army, the Stalwart Tiger Army, and the Hidden Leopard Army would each send one of their most elite brigades to participate in the parade. The Shuanzhou County Guard Division, as the representative of the local guard divisions, would also send a brigade to participate. Then there was the Navy. The 5 fleets would each send a sentry sergeant to participate in the parade, including the Flintlock Squad. The Marine Corps, which was currently undergoing training in the Special Warfare Base, would also send a brigade to participate in the parade. The Cliff Mountain Fleet would also send a battalion of sailors to patrol the Friendship River outside the city on warships. During the parade, there would also be a display of 12 P1 cannons. Even the newly formed War Elephant Unit would send 9 war elephants to participate in the parade. At that time, the aerial unit would also perform in the sky above Shanghai City. The only ones who could not participate in the parade were the Divine Martial Guards. The Divine Martial Guards would not leave Ouyang Shua's side for the coronation ceremony the next day, so there was no way for them to participate in the parade. In addition to the army of Shanghai City, Fallen Phoenix City, Heartstone City, and Black Lion City would each send a brigade to participate in the grand parade as allies. There were more than 30,000 officers and soldiers participating in the parade. It was truly a majestic sight. At this moment, all the troops participating in the parade had gathered in Shanghai City in advance. They were stationed in the Royal Guards camp, training day and night in preparation for tomorrow's parade. At 9 o'clock in the morning, the Queen of Atlantis and her entourage arrived at Shanghai City through the teleportation formation in the base city. Ouyang Shua personally rushed to the teleportation formation to welcome them. The lineup of Kalia and her entourage was somewhat beyond Ouyang Shua's expectations. In addition to the Atlantean diplomatic group, there were actually 10 Mediterranean Sea lords accompanying them. Ouyang Shua immediately understood that this was the surprise that Kalia had mentioned. She had also put in a lot of effort. Previously, when she knew that Shanghai City had encountered difficulties in inviting the lords, she used some unknown method to bring the Mediterranean Sea lords over. Is this Shanghai City? It's really spectacular. Even though Kalia was born in the mysterious Atlantis city, she did not hide her admiration for Shanghai City. Both cities had their own charm and represented the charm and heritage of the Eastern and Western cultures. Kalia smiled slightly and began to introduce the 10 accompanying lords to Ouyang Shua. It could be seen that these lords were in awe of Kalia. He really did not know what means this queen had used. Ouyang Shua shook hands with them one by one. Please. After a brief exchange of greetings, Ouyang Shua personally led the way. In order to entertain the distinguished guests participating in the coronation ceremony, the construction department specially transformed the pavilion that was previously built in the Southwest University China Hall to entertain the disciples of the 100 schools of thought into a post house to entertain the distinguished guests. Naturally, it was also extremely luxurious. In the post house, Ouyang Shua talked with Kalia alone for half an hour, mainly about the latest situation in the Mediterranean Sea. Speaking of this, Kalia's smile had already disappeared. Kalia reminded him, Ouyang, the Mediterranean Sea has been very treacherous and unstable recently. You have to be careful. Ouyang Shua nodded and mentioned the silver hand to her. Kalia was greatly shocked when she heard this. No wonder the members of the Mediterranean Alliance are wavering this time. Even Henry did not agree to attend your coronation ceremony. So that's why. If that's the case, can you handle it? Kalia was a little worried. Ouyang Shua smiled and said, There might be some turbulence, but it's all right. I know what I'm doing. That's good. Kalia smiled and suddenly said playfully, Ouyang, I want to meet your wife. I want to see what kind of legendary woman she is to be able to capture your heart. Ouyang Shua shook his head in amusement. Western women were just that bold. All right, I'll have my attendants send you to the palace later. You guys will have a good chat. Kalia smiled and clapped her hands. That's great. Ouyang Shua's schedule was full today. Kalia was a considerate woman and did not ask Ouyang Shua to stay for long. She smiled and said, Ouyang, go ahead. Then have fun. Ouyang Shua bade farewell and left. Kalia seemed to have made a good start. Following that, distinguished guests arrived one after another. Without a doubt, those who came today were the allies of Shanghai City. There is no need to mention Feng Qiuhuang and the others. The three ancient tribes, the Yellow Emperor tribe, the Yin Emperor tribe, and the Shang tribe, also arrived one after another. What surprised Ouyang Shua was that among the Yin Emperor tribe's delegation, he saw the girl that he had met once before. After not seeing her for 3 years, the little girl from back then had already grown into a slender and elegant young lady. Big brother Ouyang. The girl greeted him crisply. Ouyang Shua smiled. For some reason, he had a natural good impression of the girl. The girl also knew that it was Ouyang Shua who secretly arranged people to save her life on the battlefield map. Naturally, she was very close to Ouyang Shua. However, after entering the wilderness, the Yin Emperor did not allow the girl to go out. Otherwise, the girl would have run to Shanghai City to play with Ouyang Shua. This time, when she heard that big brother Ouyang was going to ascend the throne, the girl pestered the Yin Emperor to let her come with the delegation. The Yin Emperor could not resist and finally agreed to the girl's request. Chapter 845. After handing the girl to Binger, Ouyang Shua went to entertain the other guests. What surprised Ouyang Shua was that Battle Wolf actually came to Shanghai City a day earlier. Brother Ouyang, congratulations. Battle Wolf was straightforward and efficient, but it was hard to tell from his face. Ouyang Shua naturally welcomed him warmly and said with a smile, Brother Battle Wolf, please, The two arrived at the hostel, and Battle Wolf took the initiative to talk to Ouyang Shua alone. Ouyang Shua knew that Battle Wolf must have something to do for him to come early, so he naturally did not refuse. The two talked for less than 20 minutes in a room, but Battle Wolf's words made Ouyang Shua bewildered. When Ouyang Shua walked out of the hostel, his expression was indescribably strange. It's true, Ouyang Shua wanted to say something, but he did not know what to say and could only laugh and shake his head. By 5 p.m., all the invited guests had arrived, and it could be said to be full. At 7 p.m., Ouyang Shua brought Song Jia and Binger to the banquet hall of the hostel to entertain the guests. The banquet was very lively, and the atmosphere was very lively. But under the liveliness, there were also undercurrents. This time, the guests included Shanghai City's staunch allies, enemies, neutral forces, and even foreign forces. It could be said to be a mix of good and bad people. Apart from the relationship with Shanghai City, the relationship between the guests was also quite subtle. For example, there were sparks between Battle Wolf and the tyrant of Western Chu, Xiang Yu. These two were fighting for the leadership of the eastern region, and it was not peaceful recently. When the invited neutral lords saw Battle Wolf, they could not help but look away. They had hesitated before, but in the end, they still chose to come to Shanghai City. The lord's eyes were bright, and from the looks of it, even if Yanhuang Alliance had Silver Hand as their backing, at least in the China region, Yanhuang Alliance could not do anything to Shanghai City. Since that was the case, how could they follow in the footsteps of the Seeking Dragon and be used as pawns? With such a group of people gathered together, it was easy to imagine what kind of chemical reaction would occur. The Queen of Atlantis, Kalia, became the center of attention, second only to Ouyang Shua. Who didn't know that Shanghai City's aerial team came from Atlantis? If they could have a relationship with this queen, it would be better than anything. Even a Mediterranean Sea Lord came to Shanghai City to congratulate. Adding Kalia's stunning appearance, it was inevitable that a group of male lords gathered around her. Other than Kalia, the Yin Huang tribe and Shang tribe also attracted a group of lords. The disappearance of the three ancient tribes had piqued the curiosity of players in the outside world. It was just that the people from the three great ceremonial groups turned a blind eye to the other lords probing. It seemed that the three tribes did not intend to take this opportunity to come out of the mountains. Living in seclusion was still their established strategy. Seeing this, the lords could only return resentfully. The Shan City Wolf to Chu City, and the Shan City Xiang City, Xiang City. Other than the war wolves, the other lords didn't have any relations with West Chu, so naturally they didn't need to get close. Secondly, West Chu's strongest point was their army, but their territory construction was lacking. There was nothing special about it. Yang Chu was Yang country to be the Yang, Hiang, Xiang City Wolf, Yangzhou City, Yangxiang City, Yang and Xiang Shan. Ouyang Shua looked at the crowd. No matter who it was, as long as they came, they were Shanghai City's friends. Ouyang Shua naturally looked at everyone with an aloof attitude. No matter who it was, as long as they came to congratulate him, they would be a friend of Shanghai City. At least in the coal trade, Xiang Yu was very cooperative. At least in the coal trade, Xiang Yu was very cooperative. As a result, the guests and the host were happy. The banquet ended at around 8:30. Some lords suggested a night tour of Shanghai City, while others continued the unfinished business of the banquet. It was very lively. What they didn't know was that the entire hostel was under the surveillance of the Shanghai guards. Gaia 4th year, April 18th, Shanghai City. The rebuilt summer palace covered the south of Royal City, taking up half of Royal City's area. In the middle of the summer palace was a palace complex built with the Protectorate of Southern Border as the foundation. It was large, majestic, and magnificent. The Protectorate of Southern Border's back garden extended to the east and west. It had been expanded into the Imperial Garden, with exotic flowers and plants competing with each other. The amusement park in the Imperial Garden had been expanded several times. It occupied 100 acres and was spectacular. The home of the lucky beast, Qi, and the guardian beast, Murphy, were both in the Imperial Garden. On the west side was the Yamen Garden, which was expanded from the 4 general bureaus. It looked very imposing. On the east side was the altar of heaven, with the altar of earth, the temple of the Yellow Emperor, the civil and martial temples, and a row of hidden buildings. The temple of the Yellow Emperor was slightly different. On the 2 sides of the statue of the Yellow Emperor, statues of the Yin Emperor and Xia Yu were added to show that the great Xia dynasty originated from the Yin and Huang emperors. As such, the temple of the Yellow Emperor was officially renamed as the ancestral temple of the great Xia dynasty. Yesterday, Ouyang Shua had sent 2 cabinet ministers, Jiang Shang and Ko Jun, to the ancestral temple to comfort Emperor Xia. This was to show that Shanghai City would inherit the great Xia dynasty and establish a new dynasty in the wilderness. Today, Ouyang Shua was going to formally worship the ancestral temple. The sky was getting brighter. Purple clouds appeared in the east, and the slightly dim moon was still hanging high in the sky. The weather was good. It was another sunny day. Outside the Wuji Palace, Su Chu was leading a row of guards, while Zisu was leading a group of female officials. They were all waiting. The incense from the incense burner in front of the palace permeated the courtyard. "Your Majesty, the auspicious time has arrived," a female official shouted. As soon as she finished speaking, the sound of bamboo flutes could be heard. In the Wuji Palace, Ouyang Shua had been bathing and burning incense since early in the morning under the care of the female officials. He did not eat or drink. When he heard the shout, he immediately walked out of the main hall. Ouyang Shua was wearing a bright yellow imperial robe. There were 12 crowns on it, and a ribbon was tied to his chin. His ears were drooping, and he looked very elegant. He walked down the stairs and entered the imperial carriage. He closed his eyes and sat in the imperial carriage without saying a word. In history, the great Xia dynasty had the wood virtue. Although Ouyang Shua inherited the great Xia dynasty, he did not want to use the 5 virtues. He used Xia Yu's flood control as an opportunity to derive the meaning of earth restrains water and define the new great Xia dynasty as the earth virtue. This also announced the great Xia dynasty's innovation in the wilderness and its intention to open up new territories. The earth virtue was one of the 5 virtues of the Yellow Emperor. Therefore, Ouyang Shua was wearing a bright yellow imperial robe. Dang! The sound of the bell resounded through the 9 heavens. The official shouted, "Set off!" The sound of the golden bell, the harmonizing sound of the harp, the chimes, and the entire imperial carriage was steadily lifted. The 9 layers of vermilion gates opened one after another. The moment they stepped out of the palace, they were greeted by the cheers of 1,000 years. "Long live our Majesty! Long live our Majesty!" Under the escort of the guards, they left King City. Everyone on the streets, regardless of whether they were commoners or officials, wise or foolish, old or young, willing or unwilling, had flowers and incense placed in front of their doors. Their entire families, old and young, came out. When they saw the imperial entourage coming from afar, they all cheered and danced, kneeling to pay their respects. Ouyang Shua sat motionlessly. Whether it was a white-haired old man or a young child, they all knelt by his side and shouted 3 times. With such heavenly might, it was no wonder why there were so many dissolute people in the past and present who fought their entire lives for the throne. At this moment, the imperial carriage came out of the great bridge in the inner city. The bridge was very high, and looking down from above, one could see the river flowing below. The mansions of the nobles, generals, officials, and wealthy citizens stood in great numbers, and every household had incense placed in front of them. Ouyang Shua looked down with mixed feelings in his heart. After ascending to the throne, he first worshipped the altar of heaven and then the altar of earth. The altar of heaven was the most important. The altar of heaven was 9 zhong and 9 qi. The bottom was made of yellow soil, and the top was made of white marble. It was as smooth as a mirror. The civil and military officials stood on both sides according to their ranks and bowed to welcome the Majesty. The carriage landed on the ground, and Ouyang Shua walked out with his hands behind his back. Immediately, the officials knelt on the ground. Ouyang Shua slowly walked up. The wind blew against his robe, and the 12 feathers on his robe clattered loudly. Ouyang Shuo stood on the stage and personally read the funeral rites. The imperial heavens and the empress of the earth have been decreed by the Tao. I do not dare to accept such a title, but today, in the wilderness, it is said to be a divine artifact. It cannot remain empty for long, and a new system must be established. Although I am of little virtue, I do not dare to defy the will of the heavens. I will establish the Xia dynasty in the world, and establish the primordial divine marshal to inform the heavens. As soon as these words were said, the next words were, "Long live, long live, long live." Ouyang Shuo then took out a special imperial edict and picked up a special brush, dipping it in the prepared cinnabar. This cinnabar was mixed with Ouyang Shuo's blood and was connected to his blood. Ouyang Shuo picked up the brush and wrote 5 big words on the imperial edict. Great Xia dynasty, establish. In an instant, the imperial edict soared into the sky. Countless light spots flew up from the ground and converged into a river, pouring into the imperial edict. This was the convergence of the fate of the people in the territory. The imperial edict received a great force and quickly expanded, shooting up into the sky. The imperial edict turned into a canopy, covering the sky and the sun. At the same time, the spiritual energy within 1,000 miles converged towards the imperial edict and poured into it. The imperial edict shone with a golden light. White fate hung upside down, and green spiritual energy rose. The 3 colors of gold, green, and white intertwined, and the imperial edict could no longer be seen. Suddenly, there was a loud boom, and the sky exploded. The imperial edict that was like a canopy suddenly shrank inwards, constantly compressing and changing. When the 3 colors of gold, green, and white dissipated, a large bronze cauldron appeared in the sky. This cauldron was simple and dignified, and its container was unfathomable. At this time, the 3 colors of gold, green, and white surged and roared like a vast ocean, once again pouring into the cauldron. In just a moment, a red sun gradually rose, emitting billions of red lights, and inside it was the word Xia. The white clouds in the sky dispersed, and a huge purple dragon that stretched for thousands of miles appeared. The huge dragon let out a long roar, summoning the wind and summoning the rain. It raised its head, and its figure changed, diving towards the large cauldron. As it opened its mouth, the sun that contained the word Xia rose from the large cauldron. With a boom, the large cauldron connected the sky, and countless stars immediately shone down, dazzling. After a while, the huge purple dragon dived down from the starry sky, and its figure gradually shrank, entering the cauldron. In an instant, a huge purple dragon relief appeared on the body of the cauldron, and it surrounded the body of the cauldron. Chapter 846. The purple dragon entered the cauldron, and the divine artifact of the kingdom was completed. The huge cauldron shone brightly in the air, its aura engulfing 10,000 miles, suppressing the surrounding world, exuding a might that could rule the world. Suddenly, the big cauldron shrank inwards and instantly turned into a small cyan cauldron the size of a finger. It flew down from the sky and poured into the space between Ouyang Shuo's eyebrows. It went all the way down and stopped above Ouyang Shuo's dantian and slowly rotated. As it rotated, it gushed out streams of spiritual energy to feed its master, Ouyang Shuo. Being affected by this, Ouyang Shuo's dantian instantly expanded to more than double its original size. Even if Ouyang Shuo's cultivation was deep, his dantian still faintly felt a swelling pain. Fortunately, the golden quintessential essence in his dantian was constantly devouring the cyan spiritual energy, fusing with it. The quintessential essence pool was growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, his dantian was once again filled with golden true essence. Ouyang Shua's Dantian had already transformed into a golden ocean, and a small azure cauldron floated on the surface of the ocean, suppressing the surging waves. The huge purple dragon flew out of the green cauldron and swam in the sea with great satisfaction. Right at this moment, a series of system notifications entered Ouyang Shua's ears. System notification. Congratulations to player, don't say you don't have clothes. The divine armament of the kingdom has been forged, and you have successfully established the Great Xia dynasty. The era title is Martial God. Please check the stats of the divine armament. Name: Great Xia Imperial Tripod, God level. Type: Divine Artifact Attributes. Root +5, Comprehension +5, Fortune +10, Charm +10. Characteristics: suppresses the fate of the nation. All territories of the Great Xia dynasty are guarded by artifacts, guiding the fate of the dynasty to protect the people. Increases the defense of the border by 80. Increases the combat power of the army by 50. Increases the defense of the capital by 150. Increases the overall quality of the people by 50. Increases the cohesion of the dynasty by 50. Characteristics: True Dragon Protection. The body of the Son of Heaven is protected by the True Dragon. Invulnerable to all evils and invulnerable to all magic. Demons will retreat and automatically form the aura of the Son of Heaven. Knives and swords cannot touch the body easily. Can automatically save the owner. Characteristics: items refined by blood. Can be taken out of the game world. Skills: Son of Heaven's Dragon Fist. Gather the mighty power of the King's Cauldron. Gather the spiritual chi from all directions, and transform the destiny of all people. One punch can split mountains and seas, and no one can stop it. Cooldown time: 1 year. Evaluation: a divine artifact that protects a nation, a supreme treasure that can stabilize the destiny of a nation. Unique item: bound to Heart's Blood. Cannot be dropped, cannot be traded, can be leveled up. Without a doubt, this was the best divine weapon Ouyang Shua had ever seen. With this cauldron, not only did it greatly increase the overall strength of the Grand Xia dynasty, Ouyang Shua's personal safety was greatly guaranteed as well. Even if he encountered any danger, he would have a relic to save him. More importantly, the Great Xia King Cauldron could be brought out of the game world. This also meant that at this moment, in the game cabin of the spaceship, there was also a small cauldron floating in Ouyang Shua's Dantian. It was extremely mysterious. This was the first great gift that Gaia bestowed upon the victor of the Lord of the Wilderness. From then on, the Grand Xia dynasty in the game would form a connection with Ouyang Shua's body in reality. Their fates would be linked, and they would prosper together. At this point, Ouyang Shua had laid down his first foundation in reality. System notification: congratulations to player, don't say you don't have clothes. You have cultivated the Yellow Emperor's Canon of the Inner Chi Nurturing chapter to the 12th level of perfection. Please search for the next chapter of the Yellow Quartz Interior Scripture in time. According to what Ouyang Shua knew, the Yellow Quartz Interior Scripture should be in the next battle, the Battle of the Fei River. The Yellow Quartz Scripture was also known as Laozi's Yellow Quartz Scripture. Its contents included the Yellow Quartz Exterior Jade Scripture and the Yellow Quartz Interior Jade Scripture. During the Jin Dynasty, the Middle Scenery Scripture was added. The rhymes of the Exterior Scenery Scripture were older than the Interior Scenery Scripture. It could be as early as the Han Dynasty, but not as late as the Three Kingdoms. The rhymes of the Interior Scenery Scripture matched the rhymes of the Eastern Han Dynasty, Wei, and Jin Dynasty, and it was especially possible for it to be from the Wei and Jin dynasties. It was because of this that Gaia gave this scripture to the Wei, Jin, and Northern and Southern dynasties. System notification: congratulations to player, don't say you don't have clothes. You have cultivated the Yellow Emperor's Canon of the Inner Chi Nurturing chapter to the 12th level of perfection. You have obtained a special characteristic, Virtue of Earth. Please explore the specifics yourself. Virtue of Earth. One of the 5 virtues, yellow in color, 5 in number, determines the official's name and harmonizes with the melody. It was not only the merit of the earth, but also the merit of the monarch. It enhanced the heavenly perception and had endless uses. Just like the Emperor's Way that was derived from the 6th level, it was another speciality. Fortunately, although Gaia's description was vague, Ouyang Shua had experienced the benefits of the Emperor's Way. It was likely that the virtue of Earth would also subtly change Ouyang Shua. After cultivating the Yellow Emperor's Canon of the Inner Chi Nurturing chapter to perfection, Ouyang Shua's combat rating immediately soared to the mid-grade purple gold. Even if he were to fight against a fierce general like Eli, he would not be at a disadvantage. System notification. Congratulations to player. Don't say you don't have clothes. With the nourishment of a nation's founding fortune, the founding treasure, Emperor's Seal, has been upgraded to the Imperial Jade Seal. Please explore the specifics yourself. Ouyang Shua was not in a hurry to check the attributes. Instead, he picked up the Jade Seal and looked at it. He saw that the Jade Seal was engraved with the words blessed by the heavens, live long and prosper. The front of the Jade Seal was engraved with the words Great Xia Dynasty. Name, Imperial Jade Seal, God Tier. Type, Dynasty Heirloom. Attributes, Bone Root +5, Comprehension +5, Fortune +5, Charm +5. Characteristics, Demon Suppression and Exorcism. Cannot be stained by evil. Demons retreat. Characteristics, Seal, increases the popularity of the dynasty by 50, increases the dynasty's fortune by 30. Characteristics, Fate Protection, uses the power of the Emperor to guide the territory's fortune and people's hearts, protecting the people. Evaluation, Emperor's Seal has been infused with the spirit of the Qilin and has been nourished by the nation's founding fortune. It can assist in stabilizing the nation's fortune. It is a supreme treasure, an essential item for issuing imperial edicts. Compared to the Emperor's Seal, the Imperial Jade Seal is more orthodox and can be used to issue imperial edicts. When an imperial edict is stamped with the Imperial Jade Seal, it is equivalent to being stained by the dynasty's fortune and cannot be changed. It has supreme authority like a heavenly rule. System notification. Congratulations to player. Don't say you don't have clothes. With the nourishment of the nation's founding fortune, the Temple of Heaven's Shang Cauldron has been automatically transformed into the Xia Cauldron. Its attributes have been further improved. Please explore the specifics yourself. Name, Xia Cauldron, God Tier. Attributes, Ghost God Protection, increases the dynasty's defense by 40. Supreme Nobility, prompts, Emperor's Dignity by 40. Dominating Cauldron, increases the dynasty's army's combat power by 40. Characteristics, Suppression, enemies that have invaded the capital will be suppressed by the Xia Cauldron, and their combat power will be reduced by 40. Evaluation, this is a dynasty square cauldron, a symbol of nobility and power, and can be used for sacrificial ceremonies. Compared to the previous Shang Cauldron, the Xia Cauldron was upgraded to a divine artifact. Not only did its attributes double, but it also gained a new characteristic, Suppression. It could be said to be on a whole new level. In this way, the Divine Beast, the Divine Artifact, the Imperial Jade Seal, and the Xia Cauldron were gathered as soon as the Great Xia Dynasty was established. It could be said to be a lot of opportunities. At this step, the sacrificial ceremony officially came to an end. Just the infusion of fortune produced during the sacrificial ceremony had greatly benefited Ouyang Shua and his Great Xia Dynasty. All kinds of secret treasures had been collectively updated, which was in line with the new atmosphere of the founding of the dynasty. After the sacrificial ceremony, there was still the altar of earth and then the ancestral temple. After the sacrificial ceremony, Ouyang Shua once again sat in the imperial sedan and entered the main hall. The cabinet led the ministers and hundreds of officials and knelt. The ceremony is complete. Please ascend the throne. Ouyang Shua slowly walked up. The throne in the middle had been replaced by a throne, and it was much wider and taller. It was more than enough to seat 3 people. He sat upright in the middle, and the main hall became solemn. The music changed, and the ceremonial official shouted, "All officials salute. Long live, long live, long live." The hundreds of officials kowtowed 9 times. Ouyang Shuo sat on the throne, and when he regained his senses, he had already ascended the throne. He said, "You may rise. We thank you for your kindness." Ouyang Shuo said, "Today I have ascended the throne, and I will sweep through the world and unify the world. All officials will respectfully perform your duties and follow me to conquer the wilderness and make the great Xia dynasty prosperous. I and the imperial court will not be stingy with the rewards." The cabinet led the hundreds of officials and once again bowed and shouted, "Long live, long live, long live." Ouyang Shuo's mood was calm, and he threw out the appointment of the officials in the imperial court and said, "When I ascended the throne, the hundreds of officials cannot be empty. Jin Jiangshan will be the first minister of the cabinet, and Ko Zhuan will be the second minister of the cabinet." Done. Jiangshan and Ko Zhuan were already prepared, and they had already ascended the throne in history, so they were not too excited. They bowed and said, "Thank you for your kindness, your majesty. Long live the king, long live, long live." Ouyang Shuo continued to appoint officials and said, "I will promote the administration department to be the executive yuan, the internal affairs department to be the internal affairs department, the finance department to be the finance department, and the military department to be the privy council. Jin Shao, he will be the Minister of Administration. Wei Yang will be the Minister of Internal Affairs. Fan Li will be the Minister of Finance. And Duru Hui will be the Minister of Military Affairs. These four officials will be the head of all the officials." Shao He, Wei Yang, Fan Li, and Duru Hui stepped out and bowed and said, "Thank you for your kindness, your majesty. Long live the king, long live, long live." Only the above 6 important officials could be appointed at this time and place. As for the rest of the major institutions, they would be announced in the form of an imperial edict after the ascension ceremony, so there was no need to repeat them. Other than the appointment of officials, there was also the granting of nobility. Ouyang Shuo said slowly, "The great Xia dynasty is able to establish itself in the wilderness and prosper to this day, all because of the meritorious civil and military officials. This king and the imperial government will not be stingy with the bestowal of nobility." The cabinet led the civil and military officials as they bowed and cheered, "Long live, long live, long live." Ouyang Shuo was somewhat excited at this moment. He recalled how the great Xia dynasty had grown from a tiny village to where it was today, all thanks to the help of the countless civil and military officials around him. If he did not reward them, it would not be enough to show his contributions. According to Gaia's settings, although Ouyang Shuo had ascended to the throne, his nobility was still that of a duke. There were exceptions, and the nobility of the officials would be reduced by 3 ranks, while the concubines would be reduced by 2 ranks. Therefore, the civil and military officials could only be conferred a 3rd-rank marquis. Even a player like Bai Hua, who was already a 2nd-rank marquis, had his nobility frozen by Gaia after Lingxi City was merged into Shanghai City. Only after Ouyang Shuo ascended to the throne and conferred Bai Hua a noble title could he unconfer it again. The reduced nobility could only be made up for when Ouyang Shuo's nobility was raised again. Chapter 847. In the main hall, Ouyang Shuo began to confer titles. Shi Wansui is the Marquis of Bravery and Loyalty, 3rd-class Marquis. Bai Qi is the Marquis of Wuhan, 3rd-class Marquis. Fan Zhongyan is the Marquis of Chuxiang, 3rd-class Marquis. Duruhe is the Marquis of Kaixiang, 3rd-class Marquis. The 4 of them stepped forward and bowed, saying, "Thank you, your majesty. Long live the king." Among them, Shi Wansui was the most excited. He didn't think that the king would be so loyal. Shi Wansui was the first general to follow Ouyang Shuo. He grew up with the great Xia dynasty and was the most meritorious general in the territory. He was the first to be conferred the title of Marquis. Bai Qi was the key figure in the rise and transformation of the territory's army. He was also the leader of Shanghai City's expansion and the invincible war god of the great Xia dynasty. He was the second to be conferred the title of Marquis. Fan Zhongyan was the first official to appear in the territory. He participated in the establishment and operation of Shanghai City's political structure. He was also the third to be conferred the title of Marquis. Du Ruhui had been in charge of the military office for a long time and was the core figure in the reorganization of the army. Although her performance was not eye-catching, she was a hero behind the scenes and was the fourth to be conferred the title of Marquis. Among the NPCs, only these four civil and military officials were conferred the title of Marquis. The rest of the civil and military officials were conferred the titles of Count, Viscount, and Baron according to their contributions. After the coronation ceremony, the list of titles would be issued in the form of an imperial edict. Other than the NPCs, there was another group of people waiting to be conferred the title. They were the lords who had annexed their territories to the Great Xia dynasty. Ouyang Shuo would also confer them the title of Marquis so that his allies would not be disappointed. An NPC becoming a noble was only a form of honor. There was neither a fiefdom nor an additional salary. However, it was different for a lord player becoming a noble. Ouyang Shuo would bestow a corresponding fiefdom to them, allowing them to obtain additional benefits. This was done to link the overlord player's achievement points after the game ended. Ouyang Shuo slowly said, "I hereby bestow upon Bai Hua the title of Marquis Lingxi, a third-rank Marquis. I hereby bestow upon Mu Lanyue the title of Marquis Milan, a third-rank Marquis. And I hereby bestow upon Sun Se the title of Earl of Cliff Mountain, a first-rank Earl." Ouyang Shuo was especially kind to Sun Xiaoye, a woman he had interacted with in real life. Although Sun Xia wasn't a lord, she was still conferred the title of a first-rank Earl, second only to White Birch and Magnolia. Of course, as the #1 architect of the Great Xia dynasty, who had participated in the planning of Cliff Mountain City, Shanghai City, and the Summer Palace, and was also the president of the Falling Moon Society, Sun Xiaoye deserved this title. The three women stepped forward with different expressions on their faces. In the end, they all bowed and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty, for your kindness. Long live the king, long live the king." The conferment of the remaining lord nobles was also announced in the form of an imperial edict. The principle that Ouyang Shuo adhered to was that, within the limits of his ability, he would do his best not to lower the level of the lord's title that was sealed. At this point, the conferment of officials and nobility officially came to an end. A new dynasty has been established. This king has ascended the throne. I hope that all the ministers will work hard," said Ouyang Shuo. He then looked at the official and said, "I will confer the title of Empress of the Protectorate of Heaven and Earth to the title of Empress of the Protectorate of Heaven and Earth to the title of Second Marquis. Ingyu Princess to the title of Third Marquis. Ingyu Princess to the title of Third Marquis. Ingyu Princess to the title of Second Marquis." Ingyu, Qing, and Bing were the three Princess Royal. In order to take care of the officials' concerns, Ouyang Shuo did not treat them equally. Among the three eldest princesses, Bing had the highest rank, followed by Ingyu and Qing. At this time, the new dynasty was established, and the emperor's ascension ceremony was completed. Ladies and gentlemen, now that the ceremony is over, let's begin the military parade. I still need to see the queen. Dismissed. They entered the palace through the door. The weather was beautiful, and the sun shone brightly. They rode on the palanquin and passed through the nine-stack sect. There were no clouds in the sky, and the sun was shining brightly. The palace was bathed in a splendid light. Inside the Frost Cloud Palace, Song Jia had already changed into the queen's attire. Next to her were Ingyu, Qing, and Bing. They had also changed into princess attire and were competing with each other in beauty. There were also two young girls in the palace. They were Nu Hua and Hua Chungjun. For this coronation ceremony, apart from Gu Xiuan and a few other high officials, the rest of the prefectural governors had all arrived in the capital a day earlier to witness this great moment. Only less than half of the generals in the army had come, because they were responsible for defending their territory. Hua Qingjun was the same as Nu Hua. He had also begged his father, Hua Guang, to bring him to the ceremony. The three girls of the same age stood together, looking really innocent and unaffected. When they saw Ouyang Shaw, Zisu, the new head of the palace's female officials, led a group of female officials and palace maids, bowed and saluted, "Long live our king! Long live!" When Nu Hua and Hua Chengjun saw him, they shouted in unison, "Brother King!" Their voices were crisp and clear, like a spring breeze. Song Jia also led the three sisters in saluting and said, "King, Brother King." Seeing Bing, or mimicking her two sisters in saluting, Ouyang Shua smiled brightly. His promise to his sister was finally fulfilled today. Looking at the graceful young girl in front of him, Ouyang Shua felt that everything was worth it. "Let's go. Follow me to the ceremony." Ouyang Shua did not want the officials to wait for too long. He stayed in the Frost Cloud Palace for a while before setting off again. Along the way, he was majestic and glorious. On the viewing platform in front of the Summer Palace, the civil and military officials were already in place. Apart from them, there were also invited guests. They could not attend the sacrificial ceremony and were already waiting at the viewing platform. When Ouyang Shua walked down from the imperial carriage, he was greeted by a tsunami of cheers. "Long live our king! Long live our king! Long live our king!" When Feng Xiuhuang, Lao Ai, and the other lords, including Zhang Lang, saw this, they all looked envious. To the lords of the wilderness, this was the greatest honor. Perhaps they were also thinking about the day when they would ascend to the throne. Ouyang Shua brought Song Jia and the others to sit at the center of the viewing platform. Military Minister Du Ruhui, who was in charge of the military parade, immediately stood up and said loudly, "The military parade begins." As soon as he finished speaking, the bell and drum sounded, but it was military music, accompanied by the rhythmic sound of military music and the drum beats. The phalanxes for inspection filed in one after another. At the front was the Iron Armor Heavy Cavalry Brigade of the Imperial Guards, personally led by Hua Xubing. Behind them was the Mountain Barbarian Heavy Infantry, led by Yi Lai, the Iron Eagle Swordsmen, led by Bai Qi, the Li Mountain Troops, led by Sun Bin, and the Radiant Armor Heavy Cavalry, led by Han Exang. They were all symbolic troops of the various armies, which was a feast for the eyes of the guests. When the war elephant appeared on the parade ground, it caused another wave of exclamations. Following closely behind the war elephant was a P1 cannon pulled by 4 horses. It was a shocking sight to behold. Behind them were the 5 major fleets of the Navy, which mainly consisted of musketeers. Coupled with the characteristics of the 5 fleets, it had a unique flavor. Especially when they saw Admiral Alvaro of the Mediterranean Fleet, many of the lords had a new understanding of the foundation of the Great Xia dynasty. The last to appear were the allied troops brought by Feng Qiuhuang, Tao Wu, and the Siege Lion. They had also spent a lot of effort to bring the most powerful troops of their respective territories. Feng Qiuhuang brought the Iron Stupa Cavalry Brigade, Tao Wu brought the Mongolian Cavalry Brigade, and the Siege Lion brought a strangely dressed light cavalry brigade, which was presumably the special troops of the Jiangchuan province. The powerful troops displayed their majesty on the parade ground, which broadened the horizons of the guests. At the same time, they could not help but be secretly shocked by the strength of the Great Xia dynasty's army. When the aerial team gracefully flew over the viewing platform and dropped colorful ribbons, the military parade that lasted for nearly 1.5 hours officially came to an end. In the face of such an invincible iron army with a scale of nearly 2 million people, the lords seemed to have lost their last bit of courage to go against the Great Xia dynasty. It was noon when the military parade ended. Ouyang Shua personally hosted a banquet in the main hall of the Xia Palace to entertain the civil and military officials, as well as the guests. As soon as the banquet ended, the guests took their leave one by one. This enthronement ceremony had left an indelible impression on the guests. Before Kalia left, he extended an invitation to Ouyang Shua, hoping that if Ouyang Shua had the time, he would come to Atlantis City to discuss how to join forces to deal with the problem of the Mediterranean Sea. Ouyang Shua agreed with a smile. He had the same intention. When the girl left, she was reluctant to part with him. Only when Ouyang Shuo promised that he would make time to visit her in the tribe did the girl smile. Ouyang Shuo also hoped to use this opportunity to build a deeper friendship with the Yanhuang tribe. After the guests left one by one, Shanghai City finally regained its peace. Of course, the peace was only relative. At night, there would be an even more lively celebration of lights in the city. At that time, the local counties would also have an elaborate celebration ceremony to show that the whole world was celebrating. After the bustle faded, Ouyang Shuo was still waiting to receive his reward. Gaia was really generous this time. Only after the enthronement ceremony of the Great Xia dynasty came to an end did they make a series of announcements. They did not allow the system announcements to disrupt the normal progress of the enthronement ceremony. At 2 in the afternoon, the system announcement sounded on time. System announcement. Congratulations to player who says that has no clothes. He has successfully established the Great Xia dynasty. His reign title is Divine Marshal, and he has become the first lord in the China region to be crowned king. He is specially rewarded with 100,000 contribution points, 200,000 reputation points, 5 million gold coins, and a special reward. Congratulations, player. Chapter 848. Sure enough, as soon as the system announcement ended, the world announcement followed. World announcement. Congratulations to China server player. Don't say you don't have clothes for successfully establishing the Great Xia dynasty. You have become the first leader in the world to ascend to the throne. You will be rewarded with 150,000 achievement points, 300,000 reputation points, a hidden structure, golden platform, and a mysterious gift. Even though they were prepared, the players still gasped when they heard the world announcement. Not only did Gaia reward them with a hidden building, but there was also a mysterious gift. This was the first time the description mysterious gift had appeared in the announcement, and it whetted the players' appetites. Unfortunately, they were not fated to see it. As soon as the announcement ended, Ouyang Shuo heard a series of system notifications. System announcement. Congratulations to player not naked for obtaining a special reward. Do you want to receive it now? Receive. Ouyang Shuo had received a special reward once in the capital city, so he was no longer surprised. System announcement. Starting to draw special reward. System announcement. Congratulations to player not naked for obtaining an equipment reward. Obtain the purple dragon pattern cloak, a part of the legendary set Dragon's Battle. Congratulations. Ouyang Shuo smiled. This reward was to his liking. It was indeed different to have a deep source of fortune. Even a lucky draw could come true. Ever since he obtained the Dragon's Battle set, he had only collected 2 parts. Now he finally got the 3rd part. Name, Purple Dragon Pattern Cloak, God Tier, Type, Cloak Weight, 2 kg Defense, 80 Toughness, 92 Characteristics, Rapid Movement, increases movement speed by 50, Ultimate Skill, Riding Wind, inject true essence into the cloak, forming a wind shield around the body. Instantly increases movement speed by 100. Lasts for half an hour. Cool down, 1 month. Restricted professions, general, swordsman, bailiff, etc. Evaluation. Sewn from dragon skin and tempered with purple pure gold. Nourished by dragon blood and forged by heavenly fire, it cannot be wielded by anyone who is not a tyrant. Bound by blood. Cannot be traded or dropped. Can evolve again. Remarks. The purple dragon pattern cloak is a part of the divine equipment set, Dragon's Battle. Collecting a complete set can activate the set's attributes. Current set progress, March 5th. Ouyang Shuo shook his head in amusement after checking the bright purple dragon cloak's attributes. The cloak's name was frightening, but in reality, it could only be used for temporary escape. It couldn't be considered mighty at all. Fortunately, the style of the cloak was domineering, and it matched Ouyang Shuo's current identity. System notice. Congratulations to player not have clothes. You have obtained a mysterious gift. Do you wish to receive it now? Receive. Ouyang Shuo forcefully restrained his excitement. Obviously, he was rather curious about the mysterious gift as well. System notification. Starting to draw mystery gift. System notification. Congratulations to player. Not have clothes for drawing a special item. Obtain Planet Hope Basic Information Atlas X1. Congratulations. Ouyang Shua's eyes flashed when he heard this. A white light flashed, and a thick booklet appeared in Ouyang Shua's hand. The binding was very much like an encyclopedia in real life. The cover was a mysterious planet. It must be a glimpse of Planet Hope. The top left corner of the cover was marked with the words Top Secret Information in bright red. There was also a serial number 0015 below it. It showed that even among the high-ranking officials of the Federation, there were only 14 people who had access to this information. Another function of a serial number was to prevent information from being leaked. Ouyang Shua was sure that this Planet Hope Basic Information Atlas, in his hand, must have some places that were different from the other booklets. If someone leaked the information, he would be able to find out once he investigated. Ouyang Shua took a deep breath and flipped open the thick booklet. He saw that the book was divided into 3 sections: geography, species, and secret news. Each section was illustrated and lifelike. What was even more amazing was that some of the pictures inside were moving. It was obvious that they were embedded video information. Ouyang Shua roughly skimmed through it and hurriedly closed the book. To Ouyang Shua, such a piece of top-secret information was more important than any divine weapon. Even if someone used 2 god-level summoning talismans to exchange for it, Ouyang Shua would not exchange it. Especially to the current Ouyang Shua, this information was even more precious. This was because compared to the academic faction and the Silver Hand, not being able to access the information on Planet Hope had always been Ouyang Shua's weakness. It was indeed a mysterious gift. Ouyang Shua had reason to suspect that Gaia was using the opportunity of the Great Xia dynasty's establishment to legitimately pass this top-secret information to him. The random drawing was just a pretense. Thinking of the secret conversation with War Wolf the day before, Ouyang Shua's eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking or what he was planning. After placing the Planet Hope Basic Information Atlas into his storage bag, Ouyang Shua took another deep breath. He felt an unprecedented, lofty aspiration surge in his heart. There's still a long way ahead, Ouyang Shua muttered to himself. After receiving the 2 prizes, Ouyang Shua checked the hidden building's attributes, the golden platform. As he often studied historical materials, Ouyang Shua was no stranger to the origins of the golden platform. The golden platform was also known as the recruitment platform. It was built by King Zhao of Yin during the Warring States period. It was the residence of King Zhao's master, Guichong. According to historical research, King Zhao of Yin ascended the throne in 311 BC and ruled for 33 years until 279 BC. At the beginning of his ascension, he began to recruit talents. Inspired by the story of buying talents with 1,000 gold, he built the golden platform to recruit talents. As a result, the famous General Yu Yi, the Yinyang school of Fengyan, and the lobbying school of Zhu Xan successively sought refuge in the Kingdom of Yin. The backward Kingdom of Yin was suddenly filled with talents. From then on, it went from a weak country filled with internal strife and foreign disasters to a prosperous and powerful country. Gaia's design of the golden platform was derived from this story. Name: golden platform. Type: hidden building. Function: could spend 1 million gold coins every year to recruit a historical talent. Characteristics: unique talent attraction rate increased by 20%, territory popularity increased by 5. Description: reporting the will of the golden platform, guiding the Jade Dragon to die for the king. Man, it really lived up to its name of the golden platform. Recruiting a historical talent cost 1 million gold coins. This was the most expensive hidden building in Shanghai City. Thankfully, it was already the 4th year of Gaia's reign. The Great Xia dynasty was rich. If this were the first year of Gaia, and the first hidden building that Gaia rewarded Shanghai City with was not the recruitment hall, but the golden platform, Ouyang Shua would probably be too deep for tears. Since Gaia had rewarded him with 5 million gold coins, Ouyang Shua did not hesitate to use the golden platform's first recruitment opportunity. He wanted to see what kind of historical talent he could recruit. System notification. Congratulations to player who says nothing has activated the golden platform. By activating the golden platform for the first time, you will automatically receive a chance to recruit a historical talent. Do you wish to recruit? Yes. System notification. Recruitment confirmed. 1 million gold coins will be automatically deducted from player. When Ouyang Shua heard this, his face twitched slightly. It really was like spending money like water. He now hoped to recruit a talent that caught his fancy. Otherwise, spending 1 million gold coins would make his heart ache. A white light flashed, and a middle-aged man with a straight figure, a thin face, and a cold expression appeared. Before he even said a word, he could sense an awe-inspiring righteousness and aggressive sharpness. Humble subject, Wei Zheng greets your majesty. When Ouyang Shua saw this, he had a complicated expression. He never expected to summon such a famous subject. When Wei Zheng was mentioned, the first person that came to mind was probably Wei Zheng and Emperor Taizong of Tang Dynasty, Li Shimin, the pair of sage and minister. The two molded each other, turning the monarch into a sage and the minister into a good minister. The rare relationship between the two of them had been passed down in history for more than 1,000 years. It was imitated by future generations of monarchs and ministers, and people were overflowing with praise. Wei Zheng bravely admonished his master with the creed of don't betray the ruler, don't bow down to the nobility, don't waste your relatives, don't betray your friends, don't change your mind, and don't betray your loyalty. His master didn't think that he was disobedient. Thus, he created the Jingguan Golden Age that people took delight in talking about. Wei Zheng lost his parents at a young age and came from a poor family. However, he loved reading and was proficient in all kinds of books and knowledge. He had great ambitions. He had once become a Taoist priest and served as a literature officer under Li Mi. After Li Mi surrendered to Tang, Wei Zheng persuaded Liang garrison General Su Shiji to return to Tang and became a subordinate of Li Jianqing. After the incident at Black Tortoise Gate, Li Shimin thought highly of Wei Zheng's courage. Not only did he not blame Wei Zheng, but he also appointed him as a remonstrant and inquired about political affairs. Wei Zheng assisted Li Shimin wholeheartedly and told him everything he knew. From then on, Wei Zheng successively served as the remonstrant official, left minister, secretary, attendant, and imperial censor. In the 7th year of Jingguan, he was conferred the title of Duke of Zheng. After his death, he was conferred the title of Sikong, Xiang Province's governor, and the title of Wenjin. Ironically, since ancient times, honest officials did not have good endings, and Wei Zheng was no exception. Not long after Wei Zheng's death, Emperor Taizong personally ordered to topple the stone tablet and obliterate the inscriptions. He smashed the mirror he had erected. Name: Wei Zheng, Emperor level, Dynasty, Sui and Tang Dynasties identity, civil official of the Xia Dynasty occupation, civil official loyalty, 75 commander, 55 force, 35 intelligence, 85 politics, 88 specialty. Honest official increases the integrity of the territory by 50, increases the popularity of the people by 15, and increases the transparency of the territory by 25. Works: 10 thoughts on remonstrant Taizong. Remarks: Wei Zheng was ambitious, shameless, well-read, and knew the art of hegemony. He had the talent to govern the country, and his character was upright and unyielding. His appearance did not exceed that of an average person, but he had always been courageous and wise. Every time he offended Emperor Hess, his expression did not change. Wei Zheng used Emperor Taoism to be close to literature, and his love for his ruler was close to chastity. Both were excellent, and it was impossible to abolish one of them. Hence, he was known as Chastity. He was ranked 4th among the 24 meritorious officials of Lingyan Pavilion. Mobile users, please browse and read for a better reading experience. Chapter 849. Wei Zheng's arrival allowed Ouyang Shua to set up the censorate to have someone in charge. The censorate was a supervisory organization established during the Han Dynasty. It was in charge of supervision, and its duties overlapped with the supervisory office of the Inner Council. Therefore, after Ouyang Shua discussed with Jiang Shang and Ko Jun, they decided to set the censorate as the supervisor of the court officials, while the supervisory office was mainly responsible for the supervision of local officials. The supervisory office was under the leadership of the Inner Council, but its rank was on the low side. It was unable to effectively supervise the court officials. The replacement of the previous supervisory office director, Jing Jiao, was assigned. At the same time, in order to fully utilize the censorate, Ouyang Shua stipulated that the supervisory office would be under the control of both the censorate and the Inner Council. In terms of supervision, the censorate could directly guide the supervisory office. Ouyang Shua had made up his mind to let Wei Zheng take charge of the censorate. Even someone as wise as Tang Taizong was not happy with Wei Zheng's insubordination. As the saying goes, dragons have reverse scales. Those who touch them will die. Wasn't Wei Zheng's miserable ending a true portrayal? Now, Ouyang Shua couldn't be sure whether he would dismiss Wei Zheng or simply execute him because he couldn't tolerate Wei Zheng's existence any longer. After all, the human heart was fickle. When they returned to the Xia Palace, it was already around 5 o'clock in the evening. Although the night had not officially fallen, the city was already brightly lit and bustling with people celebrating the birth of a dynasty. At night, Ouyang Shua did not entertain anyone. Instead, he accompanied Song Jia and Binger for dinner. The family sat together. It was peaceful and warm. In an instant, the barrier between their statuses was dispelled, and Ouyang Shua was once again washed clean. Who would have thought that the most popular family in China, or even the entire world, would spend their most unforgettable night in such a peaceful manner? Ouyang Shua's actions were always unexpected. 19th of April, Wuji Palace. In the distant horizon, a fiery red sun slowly rose, its orange-red rays illuminating the earth. The warm sunlight passed through the thin screen window and gently shone into the Wuji Palace. In the hibiscus tent, Ouyang Shua opened his eyes on time and stretched his body. After a night of revelry, there would finally be a time when the bustle would fade away. Ouyang Shua's successful establishment of the Grand Xia dynasty this time was equivalent to laying down an extraordinary foundation in the wilderness, and no one would be able to shake his position any longer. Of course, Ouyang Shua was far from being able to slack off. Within the country, although the Yin-Huang alliance had already lowered their heads, they were not ready to admit defeat. There was bound to be another round of competition in the future. The 5 major tribes of Tubo, Western Xia, Western Region, Mongolia, and Jurchen had not officially appeared yet. In the future, they would definitely be strong enemies of the great Xia dynasty, waiting for Ouyang Shua to conquer them one by one. At this time, undercurrents were surging in the world. In the 9 king cities, the reclusive emperor was ready to take action, full of ambition. The underground world had just revealed a corner, but it was already stirring up waves. The mysterious Jianghu had also quietly appeared, starting to play chess in the wilderness. Now, it was only Gaia's 4th year. Who knew what other traps Gaia would set up in the future? It would test the lords of the wilderness one after another, tormenting their minds and starving them. The future of the China region would not just be a battle between the great Xia dynasty and the Yin-Huang alliance. Many mysterious forces would appear one after another, and that would be a more complicated and magnificent war epic. Outside the country, the Silver Hand was ready to make a move, and the collision with the great Xia dynasty seemed to be everywhere. The Mediterranean Sea was treacherous, the ASEAN countries were unpredictable, and the smoke of war was everywhere in the American continent. Moreover, the shadow of the national war was gradually approaching. The conflict and killing between the Eastern and Western civilizations, the grudges left behind by history, the confrontation of blood and fire, the complexity of it, and the entanglement of interests were even more difficult to describe. Most importantly, Ouyang Shua's ambition was far from stopping. Attacking Morocco, dominating the Mediterranean Sea, managing the African continent, and opening up a new great sea route, getting rid of the Annan Kingdom, playing with Ocean, dominating the South Sea. Go to Australia, making friends with Oceania, and exploring unknown civilizations. There was also the old enemy Dongying, the wavering Goryeo, and the detached United States. These were all strong opponents of the Great Xia dynasty. The Great Xia dynasty was also far from a peak. After the dynasty, there was still the Imperial dynasty, and then the Imperial dynasty. Ouyang Shua's dream of sweeping across the world and unifying the world had just begun. Even within the Great Xia dynasty, there were still countless things that needed to be done. The industrialization had just been on the right track. The population within the country was sparse, the foundation of the counties was weak, and the development of the various places was extremely uneven. It was simply a myriad of things to do. On the road to domination, if one did not advance, one would fall back. It could be said that there was a long way to go. At this time, how could Ouyang Shua slack off? How could he slack off? As the saying went, fighting with the heavens is endless joy. Fighting with the earth is endless joy. Fighting with people is endless joy. Ouyang Shua's heart suddenly burst forth with an unprecedented lofty aspiration. This was how a man should be. At around 6 in the morning, Ouyang Shua appeared on the training field punctually. Although he had already ascended to the throne, Ouyang Shua would not disrupt the rhythm of his cultivation. He still diligently cultivated every day. When he was cultivating the inner canon of a yellow arch last night, the golden true essence in Ouyang Shua's body surged endlessly like raging waves beating on the shore. However, no matter how much he cultivated, the true essence did not increase. It was difficult to advance further in the perfected realm. Ouyang Shua did not mind and cultivated as usual. Even if he could not increase the true essence, he could still refine the true essence in his body a second time, making it more condensed and laying a solid foundation. The road of cultivation was the same as the struggle for hegemony. If one did not advance, one would fall behind. After washing up, Ouyang Shua came to the training field and saw that Su Chu was already leading a group of guards to train. Seeing this, Ouyang Shua suddenly became interested. He took out the Sky Demon Spear and said to Su Chu, "Come, fight with me." Ouyang Shua wanted to see how much his strength had improved after cultivating the inner canon of the Yellow Arch to perfected realm. Su Chu was obviously hesitant. Ouyang Shua smiled and said, "Come and fight. I know what I'm doing." Su Chu saw that he could not delay any longer, so he placed his long saber horizontally in front of him and stabilized his lower body. He first took a defensive stance, but he was not willing to take the initiative to attack. Ouyang Shua did not mind. He shook his long spear and took the initiative to attack. The Sky Demon Spear was already connected to Ouyang Shua's mind. The spear was like a dragon, pressing forward with an indomitable will. It was a move called Wild Wind Swaying Willow. There was a hidden variable in the power, and it could be hard or soft. Seeing this, Su Chu did not dare to be negligent. He raised his hands horizontally and tightly grasped the hilt of his saber. He used the move Iron Lock, traversing the river. In the blink of an eye, the long spear and the long saber collided. After cultivating the inner canon of the Yellow Arch to perfected realm, Ouyang Shua's strength was already very terrifying. Combined with the Sky Demon Spear, even a peerless general like Su Chu would feel his arm go numb after one strike. Su Chu concentrated and became serious. He pushed his thick hands forward, and the long saber slashed diagonally across the spear, cleverly dispersing the force of 1,000 pounds, and once again stood firm. But Ouyang Shua did not let up. His long spear changed, and he used one move after another. Each move was faster than the last, and each move contained boundless strength and was incomparably exquisite. He did not give Su Chu any chance to catch his breath. Su Chu's forehead was faintly covered in sweat. He was overwhelmed with shock. He did not know that His Majesty's martial arts had actually advanced to this extent. Fortunately, Su Chu was also a peerless general with rich combat experience. Even though he had suffered a loss because he had underestimated his opponent, he was still able to persevere under Ouyang Shua's storm-like attacks. When the surrounding personal guard saw this, they had already stopped their training and surrounded them. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. Ouyang Shua was also overflowing with fighting spirit. It was as if he wanted to unleash the lofty sentiments and lofty aspirations that had burst forth in the morning through this most primitive of battles. The Sky Demon Spear was being used by Ouyang Shua to the point where only streaks of black light could be seen. He had already mastered the spear technique through mastery, and there was no need to think about what would happen next. As long as he had a thought, the moves would be at his fingertips, and he would no longer rigidly adhere to the form. Su Chu was also rich in combat experience. When he saw that His Majesty's martial arts had reached the critical juncture of a breakthrough, he did not dare to be negligent. He circulated his inner breath and did his utmost to calm his chi and blood. At the same time, he withstood His Majesty's attacks and became a qualified target. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had already exchanged over 100 blows. The inner cannon of the Yellow Emperor, which had reached the perfection realm, still had an endless supply of true essence after Ouyang Shua's fierce consumption. It was truly shocking. It was worthy of being called the best chi cultivation method. In terms of true essence alone, Su Chu, whose face was slightly red, was gradually falling into a disadvantageous position. However, Su Chu's innate talent was extraordinary. Not only was he born with divine strength, his physique was also extraordinary and his body was strong. The two of them, one attacking and the other defending, were evenly matched. After fighting for a full half an hour, Ouyang Shua finally used the move carp escaping from the hook and took advantage of the situation to leave the battlefield. When Su Chu saw this, although he was already panting like an ox from exhaustion, he still stood guard at the side and did not let anyone come close. After a while, Ouyang Shua opened his eyes again, and a trace of a smile appeared on his face. He did not expect that the battle this morning would actually allow the Sky Demon Spear technique to touch the threshold of the perfection realm. In time, he would definitely be able to step into this mysterious sixth realm. Ouyang Shua glanced at Su Chu, who was standing guard at the side, and nodded in satisfaction. He smiled and said, "Let's stop here for today and continue tomorrow." When Su Chu heard this, he smiled bitterly and nodded. At around 7 in the morning, after a simple breakfast, Ouyang Shua came to the Imperial Study. In the newly renovated Imperial Study, Qingyi and Jia Su were already waiting. Of the two of them, one was about to be appointed as a scholar of the Pavilion of Secret Texts, and the other was about to be appointed as a scholar of the Pavilion of Strategic Affairs, and he would be in charge of military and political affairs, as well as planning. Both of them could be considered as close officials of Ouyang Shua. The two of them were waiting in the Imperial Study for 3 imperial edicts, which were to be read out in public during the first court meeting of the Great Xia dynasty. Among them, there were the Great Xia dynasty's system of nobility and the related list of nobles, as well as the overall structure of the Great Xia dynasty and the related appointment and dismissal of officials. The last one was about the ruling law of the Great Xia dynasty's 9-rank official system. Every one of them was related to the foundation of the dynasty, and they could not be careless. When Shanghai City was promoted to the capital city, the 3 documents had already been drafted. During this period of time, the drafts had been changed several times, and after the cabinet and the ministers had reached a consensus, the Pavilion of Secret Texts drafted them into imperial edicts. Chapter 850. In the Imperial Study, Ouyang Shua solemnly withdrew the imperial ruler's seal and looked through the 3 imperial edicts one last time. When he saw that there weren't any omissions, he personally stamped the imperial ruler's seal onto them. Thus, the imperial edict became the law and could not be changed. Seeing this, Cyan Yi brought over a brocade box and carefully placed the imperial edict into it. At this moment, the maid came to report, "Your Majesty, it's time." Ouyang Shua nodded his head, smiled at Qingyi and Jia Su, and said, "Let's go to court." 8 o'clock in the morning. the main hall of the Xiao Palace. The auspicious hour had arrived. Ouyang Shao ascended the throne and began the first court assembly of the great Xia dynasty. Ouyang Shao looked at the hundreds of civil and military officials standing in the hall and said with rapt attention, "The new dynasty has just been established, so there must be some sort of system. When this king ascends to the throne, I will destroy the primal chaos, define the system, settle the wilderness, and show the world." The officials bowed and said, "Your Majesty is wise." Ouyang Shao said, "Summon." Secretary Lang by Nanpu had been standing not too far away from Ouyang Shao. After hearing the imperial edict, he respectfully took out the brocade box and began to read the imperial edict. Bai Nanpu had been by Ouyang Shao's side for a long time. He was dependable and reliable. Although he had been placed in the secret text pavilion, he played the role of a chief eunuch, responsible for reading imperial edicts. To Bai Nanpu, this was already a boundless favor from the emperor. The first thing to be read was the system of nobility in the Great Xia dynasty. According to the laws of the Great Xia dynasty, as long as one was a citizen of the Great Xia dynasty, be it a soldier, a merchant, a scholar, or a craftsman, regardless of their background, as long as they made contributions in their respective fields, they would be conferred nobility. To a dynasty, soldiers beheading the enemy on the battlefield is a meritorious service. Merchants paying taxes to open up trade routes is a meritorious service. Scholars teaching and educating people is a meritorious service. Craftsmen inventing and creating things is a meritorious service. And officials ruling for the people is a meritorious service. Since he had rendered meritorious service, he should be rewarded. The lowest class of nobility was the baron. So the 3 classes of barons were further divided into 9 classes, with the first class as the highest and the 9th class as the lowest. There were detailed criteria for the conferment of nobility for each profession. The title of nobility conferred by the dynasty was only an honorary title. It had nothing to do with salary, and it was not hereditary. However, those who held the title of nobility had a higher status than the commoners, and the commoners had to treat them with respect. This was the greatest respect given to those who had rendered meritorious service. After reading out the system of titles, Bai Nanpu read out the first list of titles conferred. Apart from the marquises and a small number of earls, all the civil and military officials present were also conferred nobility. According to Ouyang Shao's request, the conferment of nobility wasn't based on one's official position, but purely based on one's contribution to the Great Xia dynasty. Thus, the older the territory, the higher the rank of nobility. For example, Su Shuda, the Director General of the Department of Science, Education, Culture, and Health of the Executive Yuan, had worked hard and performed meritorious deeds, and was immediately conferred the title of 3rd-rank Earl. On the other hand, the newly arrived officials were only conferred the title of Viscount, even if they were immediately promoted to the central position. For example, Ko Juan, Di Renjia, and Wei Zheng were only conferred the title of 3rd-rank Viscount symbolically. In this way, not only would they be able to compensate the old officials, but they would also be able to put pressure on the latecomers, forcing them to serve the imperial court wholeheartedly. After announcing the list of titles, it was time to announce the changes in the structure of the Great Xia dynasty, as well as the appointment and dismissal of officials. Other than upgrading and adjusting the original institutions, the reform of the dynasty also followed the example of the previous dynasty, learning from each other's strengths to make up for their weaknesses. In one breath, more than 20 auxiliary institutions were added, making the system of the dynasty more complete. This time, the auxiliary institutions included the Imperial Hospital, Hanlin Academy, Taichung Temple in charge of sacrifices, Guanlu Temple in charge of birthday banquets, the Office of Transmission in charge of official documents, the Office of Personnel in charge of issuing edicts, the Office of Astronomy in charge of astrology, the Office of Shangling Garden in charge of the Imperial Gardens, livestock farms, and vegetable gardens, and so on. In the Xia Palace, the system of female officials replaced the eunuchs. Using the original Department of Internal Affairs as the foundation, there were 12 internal departments, namely the Office of Rights, the Office of Internal Affairs, the Office of Imperial Staff, the Office of Decorations, the Office of Imperial Horse, the Office of Divine Palace, the Office of Catering, the Office of Treasures, the Office of Seal, the Office of Direct Hall, the Office of Clothing, and the Office of Prefectures. In addition, there were 4 departments in the Inner Palace, namely, the Office of Firewood, the Office of Drums, the Office of Treasures, and the Office of Chaos. There were 8 bureaus, namely, the Office of Military Affairs, the Office of Silver, the Office of Washing, the Office of Scarves, the Office of Needlework, the Office of Weaving and Dyeing, the Office of Wine, Vinegar, and the Office of Prefect. There were also 6 bureaus for the palace maids, namely, the Office of Palace Affairs, the Office of Ceremonial Affairs, the Office of Food Affairs, the Office of Sleeping, and the Office of Merit. Each bureau had 4 departments. However, only Ouyang Shua and Song Jia lived in the Xia Palace, as well as Bing'er, the eldest princess who had yet to reach adulthood. Ouyang Shua did not like luxury, so he had long ordered the 24 offices to be simple. If not, it would be impossible to maintain the operation of the entire dynasty. The auxiliary institutions were set up one by one, immediately showing the new atmosphere of the dynasty. Of course, the most important adjustment was still built with the original protectorate of the southern border as the core. These institutions were the key to maintaining the operation of the dynasty, so they could not be careless. The cabinet was set up to manage all the government affairs of the dynasty. There was a prime minister and a number of secondary ministers. Jiang Shang was officially appointed as the prime minister of the cabinet, and Ko Zhuan as the secondary minister of the cabinet, to assist Ouyang Shua in managing the court. The Grand Council was set up to manage all the military affairs of the dynasty. The Military Intelligence Department and the War Department, which were originally under the Bureau of Military Affairs, as well as the newly established Navy Command, were all transferred to the Grand Council. As such, the Bureau of Military Affairs was in charge of the daily operations of the army and the logistics of the army, while the Grand Council was in charge of the War Command. The 2 institutions were connected to each other, yet operated independently. The Grand Council was set up to have a Minister of Military Affairs and a number of commanders. The Minister of Military Affairs, Du Ruhui, also held the position of Minister of Military Affairs. The Commander of the Navy, Zheng He, the Commander of the Imperial Guards, Hua Tsubing, the Commander of the Dragon Stallion Army, Bai Qi, the Commander of the Brave Tiger Army, Sun Bin, and the Commander of the Leopard Army, Han Xian, were all members of the Grand Council. The Cabinet and the Grand Council were the highest military and political institutions of the Great Xia dynasty. Other than the special institutions directly under the jurisdiction of Ouyang Shua, the other institutions of the dynasty were under the jurisdiction of these 2 institutions. The Secretary Office was promoted to be the Chamber of Secret Texts, which was in charge of important secretaries. There was a scholar and 2 secretaries. Qingyi was set up to be the scholar of the Chamber of Secret Texts, and Bai Nanpu was the secretary. The Minister of Information was set up to be in charge of the military and political consultation of Emperor Xia, and was responsible for drafting memorials. There was a scholar, 2 scholars, and 4 secretaries. Jia Su was appointed to be the scholar of the Minister of Information, and Chun Gong was appointed to be the scholar of the Minister of Information. The Imperial Censorate was set up to be in charge of the supervision of speech. There was a Minister of the Imperial Censorate and a number of Minister of the Imperial Censorate. Wei Zheng was appointed as the Minister of the Imperial Censorate, and Feng Ting was appointed as the Minister of the Imperial Censorate. The newly established Chamber of Secret Texts, the Minister of Information, and the Imperial Censorate, in addition to the previously established Honglu Temple, Shanghai Guards, and Black Snake Guards, were the 6 institutions directly under the jurisdiction of Ouyang Shua. Under the cabinet, there were the Executive Yuan, the Interior Yuan, the Finance Yuan, and the Bureau of Military Affairs. There were also the 2 special departments of the Industry Department and the Bank of the 4 Seas. The Executive Yuan, the Interior Yuan, the Finance Yuan, and the Bureau of Military Affairs were all promoted to the Directorate. The appointment of the officials remained the same without any changes. After the change of the imperial court, the local yamen had to follow suit. According to the system, the local areas were divided into 6 levels: province, county, prefecture, county, town, and village. The number of yamen at each level had a fixed number and could not be changed without reason. Otherwise, it would be treason. At the same time, it was stipulated that the highest level of the yamen at the province was the general department. The highest level of the yamen at the county was the directorate. The highest level of the yamen at the prefecture was the department. The highest level of the yamen at the county was the division, and the highest level of the yamen at the town and the village was the section. The section, the division, the department, the general department, and the court formed a 6-level system. In this way, the upper and lower levels were interconnected, and the system was complete. Only then could the imperial court's orders be unimpeded. The last imperial edict by Nanpu read out was the Great Xia dynasty's 9-rank system of officials. Since a complete system had been established, it was necessary to have a strict and clear ranking system. According to the system, the Great Xia dynasty had 9 ranks, 1 major and 1 minor, for a total of 18 ranks. According to Ouyang Shua's request, the Great Xia dynasty did not have the 3 positions of Grand Tutor, and Grand Protector. The court's civil officials were headed by the inner cabinet, and the military's generals were revered by the Grand Council. As a result, the cabinet's first assistant, cabinet's second assistant, and the Grand Council's Grand Council were all first rank. The Minister of Administration, the Minister of Internal Affairs, the Minister of Finance, and the Minister of Military Affairs were all second rank. Du Ruhue, who held both the Grand Council and the Minister of Military Affairs, was a first rank. When the time was right, Ouyang Shua would consider establishing a new Minister of Military Affairs to oversee the day-to-day military affairs of the Grand Council. The Chamberlain of Dependencies and the Imperial Censor were second rank. The deputy ministers of the 4 great academies and the Zhili County Governor were second rank. Taking this opportunity, Ouyang Shua officially appointed the 4 deputy ministers of the 4 great academies. Zhang Tingyu was appointed as the Deputy Minister of Administration, Di Renjia as the Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs, Cui Yingyu as the Deputy Minister of Finance, and Xiahou Dun as the Deputy Minister of Military Affairs. The former Deputy Director of the General Administration of Military Affairs, Zhao Qua, was transferred to the Grand Council from the Department of War. The Zhili County Governor was the head of the local officials. He was above the governor of the province and was known as the first governor. The governor of the province, the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet of Advisors, the commander of the Shanghai Guards, and the commander of the Black Snake Guards were third rank. Under the 4 great academies were the head of the Directorate of Industry and the Minister of Seals of the Bank of the 4 Seas. They were third rank. The Grand Secretary of the Chamber of Secrets and the Imperial Censor were 4th rank. The Secretary of the 4 great academies and the Deputy Director of the 4 great academies were 4th rank. Among the 6 institutions, the Chamberlain of Dependencies was in charge of diplomacy, and the Imperial Censor was in charge of speech. They were the central departments, which was why they had the highest ranking, second only to the 4 great academies. The Cabinet of Advisors, the Shanghai Guards, and the Black Snake Guards were second, but they were on the same level as the governor of the province. Although the Chamber of Secrets was the closest to Emperor Xia, Ouyang Shua only gave it 4th rank. Such an arrangement was meant to restrict and restrain the emperor. Further down, under the 4 great academies were the directorate of the 4 great academies, and the head of the 4 great academies were 5th rank. The county governor and the deputy director of the governor's yamen were 5th rank. The head of the 4 great academies of the prefectural guard were 6th rank. The prefectural magistrate and the 4 great academies of the prefectural guard were 7th rank, and the rest of the officials were 7th rank. The 4 great academies of the county government were 8th rank, and the section heads of the prefectural guard were 8th rank. The mayor of the town was 9th rank, and the section heads of the village and town were 9th rank. The rest of the officials were not ranked. After the announcement of the 9 ranks and 18 ranks of the civil officials, all the officials in the dynasty were ranked according to their ranks, and their salaries were fixed. As such, there was a law, and the foundation of the dynasty's governance was laid. A new dynasty had arrived. Chapter 851. April was the time of spring, with birds singing and flowers blooming. Shanghai City was also full of vitality. Flowers were blooming everywhere, and willows were in full bloom. People could be seen enjoying the flowers in the parks, pavilions, and bridges. They were talking and laughing, and it was a bustling scene. It had been a week since the coronation ceremony, and the lively Shanghai City gradually returned to its original track. However, life had changed after all. On the busy streets, people could occasionally see people with noble titles passing by, enjoying the envious gazes from the surrounding people. Noble title suddenly became a popular word among the people. In addition to being rich and healthy, there seemed to be a new and higher pursuit in the life of the common people. Living under the feet of the emperor, the people in the capital city had an inexplicable heroic spirit. They were unwilling to fall behind others, and this kind of heroic spirit and fighting spirit was necessary to create a prosperous era. The Great Xia dynasty was still moving forward. In the imperial study of the Summer Palace, after some running in, the operation of the imperial court was gradually on the right track, and all the officials were performing their duties. Ouyang Shuo, the supreme ruler of the Great Xia dynasty, frowned inadvertently. The cause was a secret letter on the table. The letter was from Henry, the lord of Vic City, and brought bad news. A few days ago, Vic City was pressured by the higher-ups of the Silver Hand and finally decided to withdraw from the Mediterranean alliance. At the same time, they terminated the supply of resources to the base city. The cooperation between the two came to an abrupt end. Yesterday, Vic City sent the last batch of resources to the base city, which was only enough to sustain the base city for half a month. Without the supply of resources from Vic City, the base city was now in a precarious situation. In the letter, Henry expressed his regret for not being able to continue the cooperation with the Great Xia dynasty. However, he was very determined to breach the contract. Obviously, this time, the pressure exerted by the Silver Hand made it impossible for Henry to refuse. What's going to happen has finally happened. Fortunately, Henry still had some conscience and informed Ouyang Shuo in advance. Otherwise, the current situation of the base city would probably be even worse. Henry's action exposed the contradiction in his heart. First, Vic City could not resist the organization's arrangement for the time being. Second, Henry did not want to completely offend the powerful Great Xia dynasty. This kind of mentality was probably very common within the Silver Hand. The conflict between collective interests and personal interests had never been a new topic. Following Vic City's withdrawal from the Mediterranean alliance, the already shaky and fragile alliance was in danger of collapsing at any time. Although Kalia was in front of him now, Ouyang Shuo couldn't really remain indifferent. Who knew to what extent the storm in the Mediterranean Sea would blow? Atlantis City was the most reliable ally of the Great Xia dynasty in the Mediterranean Sea. Protecting the interests of Atlantis City was actually protecting the interests of the Great Xia dynasty in the Mediterranean Sea. There was no conflict between the two. Ouyang Shuo was extremely clear about this. Thinking up to here, Ouyang Shuo walked over to the window and gazed across the distant horizon, inadvertently looking towards the Mediterranean Sea that was 5,000 kilometers away, and he thought in his heart, "It's about time I make a trip to the Mediterranean Sea." At this moment, a female official came to report, "Your Majesty, Lord Jiang and Lord Ko have arrived." The cabinet's office was located in the Xia Palace, not far from the imperial study. After reading Harry's letter and making up his mind, the first thing Ouyang Shuo did was to summon these two cabinet elders. Before leaving, there were many things that Ouyang Shuo had to arrange in advance. After all, the new dynasty had just been established, and the foundation was not stable. There was no room for any mistakes. Ouyang Shuo turned around and said, "Invite them in." Yes. After a while, Jiang Shang and Ko Zhun walked into the imperial study under the guidance of the female official. They bowed and greeted, "Your Majesty." Ouyang Shuo waved his hand and said, "Come, have a seat. Look at this." Ouyang Shuo said as he handed over the letter written by Harry. Jiang Shang took the letter and carefully scanned through it. His face was expressionless, and he turned and handed it to Ko Zhuan. After Ko Zhuan finished reading, Ouyang Shuo asked, "How do you think this matter should be handled?" The two of them looked at each other, but they didn't know where to start. Ko Zhuan, needless to say, had just arrived and had just familiarized himself with the operation of the imperial court. He really didn't know much about the dynasty's overseas affairs, so it was naturally not good for him to speak. Even Jiang Shang didn't know much about this matter because he had been working at the Southwest University China Hall all this time. Asking them to hastily express any opinion now was really too much. There was only one point that the two of them were certain of. The base city was an important fulcrum for the dynasty's maritime trade route, and maritime trade was an important source of the dynasty's finances. Its strategic position was extraordinary. It was precisely because of this that they couldn't easily come to a conclusion. The two of them looked at each other, and Jiang Shang said, "Your Majesty, please make a decision." Ouyang Shuo smiled and said indifferently, "The waves in the Mediterranean Sea are related to the dynasty's great cause, so we must take action. In this prince's opinion, the military operation to attack Morocco can officially start." Jiang Shang was startled. He immediately understood why the king had summoned the two of them. It really wasn't to consult them, but to have some other plan. He asked tentatively, "Your Majesty is preparing to personally attack Morocco?" Ouyang Shuo looked at Jiang Shang with praise. As expected of a shrewd old man, he really hit the nail on the head. "That's right." Ouyang Shuo didn't deny it. He nodded and said, "The situation in the Mediterranean Sea is complicated and it involves a lot of people. If I don't personally go, I won't be able to stabilize the situation and open up the situation." Jiang Shang was silent. No matter how unwilling he was, he couldn't find any reason to refute. Ouyang Shuo took the opportunity to say, "During the time I personally go, I'll have to trouble the two of you to handle the dynasty's affairs." Jiang Shang and Ko Zhuan looked at each other. They knew that the king had made up his mind, but they were powerless to stop him. They could only stand up, bow and say, "As you wish, Your Majesty." Ouyang Shuo didn't really want to be a hands-off shopkeeper. The dynasty's system had already been set. Even if Ouyang Shuo, Emperor Xia, was temporarily not in the palace, the government affairs would have their own rules and regulations. In comparison, the problem of the Mediterranean Sea could not be delayed. After sending off the two ministers, Ouyang Shuo started to make arrangements for the personal expedition. This was the first time Ouyang Shuo personally went on an expedition since he ascended the throne. It was of great significance, so naturally, they couldn't be careless. First, they chose the attendants. Qingyi and Jia Su had to be brought along. Then there was the Divine Martial Guard, which was led by Su Chu. The head of the newly promoted female officials, Elder Aunt Zissou, picked 2 senior female officials and 4 of the most intimate palace maids to be in charge of Ouyang Shuo's daily life outside. There were also carriages prepared by the Taipu Temple, and so on. Ouyang Shuo naturally didn't have to worry about these. What he had to consider now was which army should be mobilized for the expedition to Morocco. This was so that the Privy Council could issue military orders in advance and be prepared. Ouyang Shuo wasn't completely clueless about Morocco. After the Black Snake Guards moved their main business overseas, one of their main efforts was to investigate Morocco's intelligence. This was to prepare for the army's attack on Morocco. It was reported that the main cities in Morocco were basically distributed along the northwest coast. They included the capital Rabat, the garden city Casablanca, the port city Tangier, and Agadir. The most important thing was the total number of Moroccan players. It was estimated to be around 2.5 million. This also meant that the enemies that the Great Xia dynasty's expeditionary army faced included at least 250,000 royal city guards, over 300,000 combat professional players, and an army of about 200,000 feudal lords. Thus, compared to the previously destroyed Star Nation, Morocco wasn't an easy bone to chew. In order to take down Morocco, the Great Xia dynasty would need to mobilize at least 300,000 to 400,000 elite soldiers. In addition, they also had to consider the reactions of Spain, Portugal, France, and other European countries in the Mediterranean Sea once war broke out in Morocco. What was even worse was that the Great Xia dynasty only had a small outpost in the base city. Whether or not it could accommodate the expeditionary army was a big problem. As for logistics, that was even more of a problem. If this expedition failed, hundreds of thousands of soldiers would lose their lives overseas. That would be a big problem. Thus, Ouyang Shual would first lead the Divine Martial Guard to the base city to mediate and make preparations. He would have to wait for a suitable opportunity to mobilize the army. He would only dispatch troops after everything had been prepared. For the army to be mobilized, Ouyang Shual had decided on the 2nd and 3rd Corps of the Imperial Guard and the 1st and 5th Corps of the Dragon Stallion Army. According to the principles set by Ouyang Shual, after the establishment of the kingdom, the 1st Imperial Guard Corps, which was responsible for guarding the royal city, and the city guard stationed outside the city would not be mobilized at will. Thus, although the monolith army was an expert in sieging cities, Ouyang Shual could only reluctantly part with them. Of the 3 field armies, the 5 Corps of the Stalwart Tiger Army were surrounded by powerful enemies and couldn't be mobilized. The Leopard Stout Army also couldn't leave because they had to defend the satellite cities. At most, they could only mobilize the 4th Corps of the Leopard Stout Army. Ouyang Shual could only mobilize the Dragon Stallion Army after much consideration. At present, Yunnan Province was the most advantageous of the 4 provinces. Its borders were the most stable, and there was no need to station too many troops there for the time being. The Imperial Guard was easy to deal with since they could be transported directly from Shanghai City. The 1st Corps of the Dragon Stallion Army was stationed outside Lingxi City and could also be transported to the base city through the teleportation formation there. The newly organized 5th Corps, on the other hand, needed to first arrive at Shanghai City and then be transported. The Navy could only rely on the Mediterranean fleet. Even the Singapore fleet, which was closest to the Mediterranean Sea, couldn't rush over to reinforce them. Ouyang Shual hoped that the Mediterranean fleet, led by Alvaro, wouldn't disappoint him. After deciding on the expeditionary army, Ouyang Shual left the rest of the matters to the Bureau of Military Affairs. On the 27th day of the 4th month, Ouyang Shual led the Divine Martial Guard and his entourage out of Shanghai City. Chapter 852. The 27th of April, Base City. The base city was built in the middle of August in the 3rd year of Gaia, which was more than half a year ago. The ruins that had been engulfed by the Sea of Fireback then had been reborn and had become a bright pearl in the Mediterranean Sea. After the end of the first ocean voyage, especially after the base city's teleportation portal was opened, Shanghai City's support for the base city had never been cut off. Today, the base city had already become a war fortress. More than 200 P1 cannons were set up on the city wall facing the sea, which was enough to intimidate all thieves. Even if the Spanish Invincible Fleet attacked the port of Gibraltar, they would probably only be able to flee in the face of such a terrifying net of cannons. The base city was also reciprocated by the Shanghai City support. As the choke point of the ocean trade, the base city generated more than 200,000 gold coins in trade revenue every month. This was especially so for the royal merchants like the Song Consortium, the Bai Consortium, and the Chui Consortium. Through the convenience of the teleportation portal, they could resell diamonds, jewelry, and other precious goods to make a fortune. For the sake of secrecy, Ouyang Shual and his party did not alarm too many people when they arrived at the base city. Only the Mediterranean Fleet's Navy Admiral Alvaro, the base city's mayor, and the Black Snake Guard's commander, Black Snake, received them. After a simple greeting, Ouyang Shual stayed in the mayor's residence, and the accompanying Divine Martial Guards quietly took over the defense of the mayor's residence. The base city's City Guard division stood guard outside. After arriving at the base city, Ouyang Shual wanted to know more about the Mediterranean Fleet. The Mediterranean Fleet played a crucial role in the attack on Morocco. Whether the fleet could resist the harassment of the Spanish Invincible Fleet and ensure that the War of Annihilation would not be interrupted was the key to the success of the battle. Fortunately, the famous Spanish Navy Admiral Alvaro did not disappoint Ouyang Shua. When Ouyang Shua left the Bay City last year, the Mediterranean fleet was not even half full due to the lack of soldiers. More than half a year had passed, and the fleet was now at full strength. The secret was with the pirates. Alvaro carried out Ouyang Shua's strategy of eliminating the pirates well. He frequently led the fleet into the Atlantic Ocean to kill all kinds of pirates, especially the Vikings who had once wreaked havoc in the Atlantic Ocean. This way, not only did they ensure the safety of the sea route, but they also obtained a batch of fierce soldiers and sailors. A quarter of the Mediterranean fleet were Vikings, and more than half of them were pirates. Fortunately, Alvaro was an iron-blooded veteran, and his methods were ruthless and brilliant. Only then was he able to suppress this group of old foxes. Another change in the Mediterranean fleet happened quietly after Lu Meng, the general of the three countries, took office. The clash of Eastern and Western techniques in naval warfare, the fusion of primitive techniques and techniques, was performed perfectly in the Mediterranean fleet. Alvaro's attitude toward Lu Meng, his deputy, had also changed from being wary and displeased to liking and admiring him. At this point, the two of them had a tacit understanding with each other. Alvaro was infatuated with Lu Meng's art of war from the East. On the other hand, Lu Meng was a man who was eager to learn. He had witnessed the more advanced and scientific navigation technology and naval warfare techniques of the West on the Mediterranean fleet. It was truly an eye-opener. As the sparks of wisdom from the East and the West collided, many strange and wonderful ideas burst forth. With the help of Navy Commander-in-Chief Zheng He, the two of them had been working together recently, planning to compile a naval training manual that combined the strengths of the East and the West to guide the entire Navy. After inspecting the Mediterranean fleet, Ouyang Shua felt a little more confident about the upcoming battle in Morocco. On his first day in Bay City, apart from inspecting the Mediterranean fleet, Ouyang Shua spent his time talking to a few ministers. After the conversation, Ouyang Shua had a clear understanding of the situation in the Mediterranean Sea. At night, Ouyang Shua stayed in his study alone, deep in thought with his eyes closed. Before he came, Ouyang Shua only had a rough outline of the Great Xia dynasty's Mediterranean Sea strategy in his mind. He did not have a clear and definite strategic plan. The conversation during the day clearly gave Ouyang Shua a lot of inspiration. Some of his ideas gradually became clear, and they were gradually linked together to form a clear and definite strategic route. To describe it in an inappropriate way, it would be build high walls, accumulate food, and slowly claim the throne. On the 28th of April, Ouyang Shua, who had made up his mind, felt refreshed. Under the protection of the Mediterranean fleet, Ouyang Shua quietly left Bay City and headed to Atlantis City. He learned from the Black Serpent that Atlantis City's situation in the Mediterranean Sea was not as glorious as it seemed on the surface. There were already undercurrents surging in the surroundings. Since they came from the same source, the Western suzerains naturally had a good impression of Atlantis, which had its own advanced technology. They were also willing to cooperate with Atlantis. The key was benefits. Kalia was a smart queen. She knew very well that the various advanced technologies of the Atlantis civilization were the foundation for Atlantis to establish a foothold in the Mediterranean Sea. Therefore, it was impossible for these technologies to be disseminated on a large scale. This created a contradiction, which was the opposite of the Western suzerains' expectations. No matter how wonderful something was, if one could not obtain it after seeking it, one would probably not have a good impression of it. Moreover, this was the game world, where the players followed the naked law of the jungle. In addition, Atlantis' support for Bay City caused the Mediterranean suzerains to be even more dissatisfied. In the eyes of the Western suzerains, Atlantis' actions were undoubtedly a betrayal of the civilization system. Limited by its territory, Atlantis which did not have a strong military force, had become a fat piece of meat in the eyes of some ambitious people. If they wanted to swallow it, all they needed was an opportunity. Fortunately, Kalia did not mention this when he came to Shanghai City to participate in the coronation ceremony. Ouyang Shua's visit to Atlantis this time was to help Kalia out of his predicament. At 11 o'clock in the morning, the warship docked at the port of Atlantis. Since it was a secret visit, and many adventure players from various Mediterranean countries had gathered in Atlantis, Ouyang Shua disguised himself and quietly entered the palace with the help of the guards arranged by Kalia. Kalia was naturally very happy to see Ouyang Shua. The keen Ouyang Shua noticed that some of the core members of the Atlantis city who were accompanying Kalia were faintly showing a trace of dissatisfaction and vigilance towards him. Seeing this, Ouyang Shua was even more convinced of his judgment. After some small talk, Ouyang Shua took the opportunity to throw out his thoughts and said, Kalia, with Vic City's withdrawal, the Mediterranean Alliance is missing an important link. I think it's time for the Alliance to disband. Kalia's expression changed drastically, and he said in a trembling voice, Why? Even without Vic City, I can still find other territories to make up for this link. Why should it disband? During the coronation ceremony, Kalia had forcibly dragged more than 10 suzerains of the Mediterranean Sea to Shanghai City to congratulate him. What he said was indeed true. Ouyang Shua pressed his hand down and gestured for Kalia to calm down. He said, disbanding the Mediterranean Alliance doesn't mean that the cooperation between Base City and Atlantis is canceled. The cooperation terms in the covenant are still valid. After thinking for a while, Ouyang Shua added, Also, this won't affect our personal friendship. Then why should we disband the alliance? Kalia asked. Ouyang Shua revealed his considerations and said, You should understand that only a neutral Atlantis city can truly exist in the Mediterranean Sea and not be criticized or threatened by any party. A transcendent Atlantis is also more in line with the interests of the Great Xia dynasty in the Mediterranean Sea. Kalia was silent after hearing that. It wasn't that Kalia didn't understand that. Although Atlantis was surrounded by danger, it didn't lack allies that cooperated with it. In fact, they were even hardcore allies. The suzerains of the Mediterranean Sea were still far from being united. At the very least, Greece had an absolute favorable impression of Atlantis. There were only a few who dared to risk universal condemnation and have designs on Atlantis. Most of the suzerains of the Mediterranean Sea still held a neutral attitude of cooperation. However, the close relationship between Base City and Atlantis, coupled with the intentional or unintentional provocation of the Silver Hand, made these allies unable to let go. That was why Atlantis was in an awkward situation. It was precisely because Ouyang Shua saw this clearly that he would resolutely help the Atlantis city out of the predicament. He did not want the Atlantis city to be involved in an unnecessary whirlpool because of the Base City. Then what about Base City? Kalia asked anxiously. Ouyang Shua smiled and said confidently, I came here in secret this time to solve the worries of Base City. You don't have to worry about it. Don't lie to me. Can you tell me the details? Kalia didn't believe him. When Ouyang Shua heard that, he smiled but didn't say anything. His gaze inadvertently swept across the other core members of Atlantis. His intention was self-evident. Who knew if any of them had been bribed by the members of the Silver Hand? Ouyang Shua was not willing to take that risk. Kalia understood. He turned around and said, You guys can leave first. When the ministers saw that, they tactfully took their leave. In fact, many of them had interacted with Ouyang Shua before and knew that he was the great benefactor of Atlantis. The ministers' vigilance just now was only because they were worried about the future of Atlantis. It was human nature. They originally thought that Ouyang Shua was here to trouble Atlantis again. Who would have thought that it would end up in such a situation? They inevitably looked a little awkward. These old fellows had been at the bottom of the sea for a long time, so they had lost some of their sophistication. They were rather cute. After the ministers left, Ouyang Shua told Kalia about the attack on Morocco. If they could really take down Morocco this time, it would be great news for Atlantis. The two of them had a secret discussion about this. Ouyang Shuo still needed some cooperation from Kalia for the military operation to attack Morocco. Chapter 853. On the 29th of April, a piece of news blew up the entire Mediterranean Sea. Queen Kalia of Atlantis issued an announcement that Atlantis would officially withdraw from the Mediterranean alliance as of today. Atlantis was willing to work with the Mediterranean countries to develop the lost technology of the Atlantis civilization for the benefit of the entire Mediterranean. As soon as the news came out, the Mediterranean lords cheered. The Greek lords could not wait to put the crown of Mediterranean queen on Kalia's head as a sign of respect. The crisis of Atlantis seemed to have disappeared without a trace. With the withdrawal of Atlantis from the Mediterranean alliance and the withdrawal of Vic City, the iron triangle of the alliance fell by two corners. The base city could not do anything alone. Under Ouyang Shuo's instructions, the base city's mayor also issued an announcement, regrettably, announcing the official dissolution of the Mediterranean alliance. As a result, the powerful alliance that had been established for less than a year came to an end. The sudden dissolution of the Mediterranean alliance made the Mediterranean Sea chaotic. When the alliance existed, it was the well-deserved hegemon of the Mediterranean Sea. It was the maker and defender of the Mediterranean Sea's maritime order. Now that the alliance had dissolved, who would rule the Mediterranean Sea? Would it be Vic City's Gallic fleet, the Spanish Invincible fleet, or even Caesar's Roman fleet? If the three did not deal with each other, there would probably be a good show. The only thing that was forgotten was probably the Great Xia dynasty's Mediterranean fleet. The withdrawal of Vic City and Atlantis showed that the base city had been deserted in the Mediterranean Sea. No matter how powerful the Great Xia dynasty is, we still have the final say in the Mediterranean Sea, the Mediterranean lords said. Of course, due to the huge profits brought by the ocean trade, the Mediterranean countries would not do anything inappropriate to the Great Xia dynasty's caravans that passed through the Mediterranean Sea. After all, no one would say no to money. Even if they did take action, it would have to wait until the new hegemon of the Mediterranean Sea was born. France, Vic City. Henry sat alone in the study with his brows furrowed. The sudden withdrawal of Atlantis puzzled Henry. Based on his understanding of Kalia and Ouyang Shuo, they should not have separated so hastily. What kind of scheme is the Great Xia dynasty hiding in this? Thinking of Ouyang Shuo's clear eyes that seemed to see through everything, Henry could not help but shiver. Half a year ago, Vic City seized the opportunity of the fall of the Spanish Invincible fleet and decisively boarded the fast ship of the Mediterranean alliance. They used this opportunity to successfully break through the blockade of Spain and galloped freely in the Mediterranean Sea. After the disintegration of the alliance, how would the Gallic fleet deal with the chaos? Henry suddenly felt a headache. He had no way to judge whether the decision made by his family was correct. Henry always felt uneasy. The Great Xia dynasty behind the scenes seemed to be even more terrifying. Spain, Tortosa. Unlike Henry's frustration, Casillas clenched his fists excitedly and said, "The Silver Hand's promise has been fulfilled. We should also take action." Sitting opposite Casillas was the Lord of Malaga City, Juan. The two most powerful lords of Spain looked at each other and saw the passion in each other's eyes. The Spanish Invincible fleet had endured for more than half a year and suffered all kinds of humiliation. It was time to bare its fangs again. Should we take down the base cities first? Juan asked. Casillas did not get carried away by the excitement. He shook his head and said, "The base cities have been built like iron by the Great Xia dynasty. It's not so easy to take them down. We'd better not go and try our luck. The most important thing now is to fight for the dominance of the Mediterranean Sea. As long as we take control of the sea, won't the base cities be under our control?" Juan nodded in admiration. "You're right. We want to let the Gallic fleet know that it's not so easy to be the overlord of the sea." Casillas' hatred for Henry was no less than his hatred for Ouyang Shuo. The two fleets were destined to be enemies. A battle was inevitable. Italy, city of Caesar. In the luxurious palace, Caesar was enjoying the gentle service of the beautiful maids while listening to the reports of his ministers. A cold glint flashed across his handsome and charming face. "So, we've lost the chance to attack the Atlantis city?" Caesar gulped down the red wine in his glass, and his voice became cold all of a sudden. "For now, it looks like this. The feudal lords who agreed to send troops together have chosen to wait and see after the Atlantis city made the announcement. A bunch of short-sighted fellows." Caesar shook his head regretfully and said rudely, "That be asterisk Curia threw out a bone, and they went to lick it like dogs." How embarrassing. The minister was speechless. "Tell Anthony that the eastern part of the Mediterranean Sea is the territory of our Roman fleet. Don't let the Spanish and French fleets come over and snatch the territory," Caesar ordered. Yes, base city. The Mediterranean Sea was temporarily in chaos because of the announcement. The Great Xia dynasty began to take action quietly. Since the main cities in Morocco were located on the Atlantic coast, which was far from the base city, even with the Mediterranean fleet's superb carrying capacity, it was impossible to transport the 4 legions in one go. Needless to say, there were still a lot of war supplies waiting to be transported. Moreover, if the Mediterranean fleet were to be deployed frequently, it would easily alert Morocco. Because of this, it was an inevitable choice to find a few deserted islands in the waters around Morocco as temporary outposts to store war supplies and temporarily station troops. Thanks to the expansion of the game map by 10 times, a small reef on the sea could be expanded into a deserted island. The Mediterranean fleet had often been fighting pirates in the Atlantic Ocean for the past 6 months, so it was no stranger to this area. Under Alvaro's arrangements, 2 material reserve bases and 3 military bases were quickly selected. The next step was to carry out the shipment of war supplies. Over the past 6 months since the Grand Line was opened, thousands of Great Xia merchant ships had traveled the Grand Line. This time, Ouyang Shua spared no expense and ordered these merchant ships to purchase a large amount of food along the way with the excuse of replenishing supplies and secretly transport them to the material reserve bases. The weapons and equipment prepared by the Combat Readiness Department were directly transported over through the teleportation array. Just this expense alone amounted to more than 200,000 gold coins. The transportation of supplies could not be completed overnight. The 4 legions temporarily did not move and remained in their respective defensive areas. Only Hua, Tsubing, and Baichi, the 2 commanders, quietly teleported to the base city. As the saying went, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Even divine generals like Baichi and Hua Tsubing would probably be defeated if they were not familiar with the enemy and did not survey the terrain in advance. Moreover, this was a cross-ocean expedition, and the army was likely to be unaccustomed to the climate. The 2 divine generals stayed in the base city for 3 days. After gaining a preliminary understanding of the Mediterranean Sea and Morocco, they took the initiative to apply to Ouyang Shua to personally go to Morocco to investigate. Baichi said, "Your Majesty, the attack on Morocco this time will be a blitzkrieg. We have to survey the terrain in advance and be prepared. Otherwise, it is very likely that a wrong judgment of the terrain will lead to variables in the war." Since Baichi had already said so, what else could Ouyang Shua do? He could only give Black Snake a death order to ensure the safety of Baichi and Hua Tsubing. Otherwise, he would bring his head to see him. Black Snake's face darkened when he heard this. He turned around and went to make arrangements. On the 5th of May, Baichi and Hua Tsubing took different merchant ships and quietly arrived in Morocco. Next, they would carry out a week-long field survey. During this period, all the war supplies were being prepared in full swing. The Great Xia dynasty was sharpening their swords for Morocco, but the outside world was unaware of it. Morocco itself was not even aware of the impending disaster. They were still doing what they were supposed to do. Thanks to the opening of the Grand Line, the feudal lords of Morocco also benefited from the ocean trade. Morocco had 3 treasures: argan, date palm, and cactus. The argan tree was a tree species unique to Morocco. It was resistant to drought and high temperatures. It mostly grew in the south of Morocco and had a lifespan of more than 150 years. The argan oil produced from the argan fruit was a very precious oil. The Berbers of Morocco had mastered the secret of using argan fruit and argan oil to make cosmetics. The argan oil could be used to massage the face, nails, hair, and body. Its anti-wrinkle effect was very obvious. In the game, Gaia had enhanced this and refined it into a technology. It was obvious that this magical cosmetics would be very popular among Western ladies and Eastern boudoirs. Naturally, it attracted merchants from all over the world. Other than argan oil, Morocco had another specialty that was very popular among merchants. It was phosphate. In reality, phosphate was one of the important pillars of Morocco's economy. It had 110 billion tons of reserves, about 75% of the world's reserves. As an important food ingredient and functional additive, phosphate was widely used in food processing. Although the game did not have as advanced industrial refining technology as in reality, the demand for phosphate was the same. In addition, because Morocco was close to the Atlantic coast, it was rich in fishing resources. Its sardines export was the world's largest, and it was the largest producer of sardines in Africa. Sardines made from sardines was not only a delicious delicacy, but it was also nutritious and easy to store. It was a very good military item. Ironically, the list of food purchased by the Great Siaz merchant ships for the Expeditionary Army included canned sardines. If the Moroccans were to know the inside story, they would probably vomit blood. It was precisely because of these specialties that Morocco was doing well in the ocean trade. Usually, there was an endless stream of Eastern merchant ships coming and going from the major ports of Morocco. It was not rare to see Eastern merchant groups in Morocco, and the players were already used to it. Therefore, the arrival of Baichi and Hua Tsubing did not cause any waves. Chapter 854. While the Great Siad dynasty was preparing for war, the Mediterranean Sea was in turmoil again. On the 10th of May, Queen Kalia of Atlantis issued an invitation to the feudal lords of the Mediterranean Sea, inviting them to Atlantis as guests to discuss the development of Atlantis technology. In ancient times, the Atlantis Empire was drowned by a monstrous flood and buried at the bottom of the sea, becoming an unsolved mystery in history. A year ago, with the help of Ouyang Shuo, Atlantis was able to reappear in the world. However, compared to the unimaginably massive Atlantis Empire, Atlantis was merely a small corner. It was less than 1,000th of the empire's heyday. In the Library of Atlantis, there were a large number of documents and records about the empire's history and civilization. Even the heir of the royal family, Kalia, was fascinated by that magnificent civilization. Kalia proposed to gather the power of the entire Mediterranean Sea to explore more underwater relics of the Atlantis Empire, so as to crack the technological civilization of Atlantis and make it reappear in the world. As soon as the news spread, many people naturally responded. Even Caesar, who had ulterior motives, could not resist the temptation and was prepared to accept the invitation. All of a sudden, the Mediterranean Sea became extraordinarily lively. As a result, an unprecedented underwater expedition was launched, making the Mediterranean Sea the focus of the entire world. On the 12th of May, Base City. Under the cover of the night, Base City was like a deep-sea giant beast. It retracted its fangs and silently lurked at the entrance of the Mediterranean Sea, using its cold eyes to monitor the ships entering and leaving the Mediterranean Sea. It was very much like a three-headed hellhound guarding the gates of hell. It was terrifying, and no one dared to provoke it. The sea breeze blew, bringing with it a fishy smell. Even at night, the port of Gibraltar outside Bay City was still brightly lit. Thousands of merchant ships with sails and flags of various countries docked at the port. Every merchant ship at the port was a giant ocean-going ship that carried the dreams of the merchants. The port was bustling with people, and it was extremely noisy. More than 10 taverns with different characteristics were lined up along the port, emitting the fragrance of wine. It was crowded, and it provided the most suitable entertainment for the merchants and sailors. As it was the throat of ocean-going trade, there were elegant taverns with pure Oriental characteristics, as well as boorish Western taverns. Most of them were products of the blend of Eastern and Western cultures. In the tavern, reserved Eastern merchants and enthusiastic Western merchants could be seen gathering together, talking about business deals. The hustle and bustle lasted until the next morning before it came to an end. Without exception, these taverns were one of the strongholds of the Black Snake Guards. For Black Snake, who used to be an international mercenary, mixing in such a noisy environment where Eastern and Western people mingled and alcohol and women played the leading roles was like a fish in water. The Black Serpent was too familiar with this environment. Even with its eyes closed, the Black Serpent knew who it could get effective information from and who had ill intentions. Taverns had always been a well-informed place. Merchants traveled all over the world and were knowledgeable. Even the slightest bit of news that they might accidentally leak could be turned into an important piece of information. Just through these taverns, the Black Snake Guards could obtain large amounts of international intelligence. 9 p.m. Desert Star Tavern. Among the dozen or so taverns, the Desert Star Tavern located on the westernmost side of the pier was not very eye-catching. The only difference was that the owner of the tavern was a black man from a nameless small country in the African continent. Of course, no one would look down on the owner of the tavern. Anyone who could open a tavern at the Bay City's pier was someone with great connections. In an ordinary room on the second floor of the tavern, Black Snake was meeting someone. At this moment, the entire tavern seemed normal, but in fact, it was under the secret surveillance of the Black Snake Guards. Even the owner of the tavern was a member of the Black Snake Guards. The dimly lit room would always give rise to some unpleasant associations. "Did you bring it?" Black Snake asked. Sitting opposite Black Snake was a Berber from Rabat, the capital of Morocco. He was in his 30s and was covered in a black robe. Even his head was wrapped in a black scarf, so his appearance could not be seen clearly. If he was from the army, he would definitely be able to tell from the way he sat that he was a soldier. The mysterious man said in a hoarse voice, "I've brought what you want." "Where's what I want?" Black Snake smiled, took out a wooden box, and pushed it to the man. "Open it and take a look." The mysterious man hesitated for a moment, but still opened the wooden box. He saw a diamond the size of a pigeon's egg lying quietly in the wooden box. Even in the dark night, it was still shining with a charming and bright light. "It's this." The mysterious man was obviously a little excited. The corner of Black Snake's mouth curled into a smile. Without seeing how he moved, the wooden box was closed again and returned to Black Snake. "You've seen the thing. It's time to show me what I want." The mysterious man looked at the wooden box obsessively. Without hesitation, he gritted his teeth, took out a scroll of map from his arms, and said with a trembling voice, "It's this." Black Snake took it, glanced at it roughly, and carefully put it into his storage bag. "You should know what the consequences of deceiving us are." When the mysterious man heard that, fear flashed across his face. Of course, he knew that the person in front of him was a demon. He said with a trembling voice, "You can verify it. If there's a mistake, I'll die a horrible death." "Good." Black Snake smiled, handed the wooden box over, and said, "It's yours." The mysterious man hugged the wooden box. Black Snake said, "Remember, if you dare to leak any information, your wife and children will be thrown to feed the sharks." "Yes, yes, yes." The mysterious man secretly wiped his cold sweat. Without staying any longer, he immediately bid farewell and disappeared into the vast night. Seeing this, a man beside Black Snake said, "Sir, are we really letting him go just like that?" Black Snake was expressionless. "What else do you want?" "Kill and rob. Destroy the corpses to destroy the evidence. There's no reason to take back what the Black Snake Guards have given away. That diamond is worth tens of thousands of gold." The man was a little excited. Black Snake's expression turned cold, and he said lightly, "Even if it's priceless, we can't break the rules. His Majesty can't stand his subordinates messing around. If I find out that anyone has any crooked thoughts, don't blame me for being ruthless." "Yes, When the surrounding Black Snake guards heard this, their foreheads were all sweating. Black Snake shook his head and said with some disappointment, "I say, you guys have been following His Majesty for so long. Can't you be a little more promising? Our Majesty wants to be the world's overlord. Don't embarrass me every day like a group of country bumpkins who haven't seen the world." "Sir, you're right." The subordinates were sweating profusely. Black Snake said, "All right, I'll be leaving first. Keep a close eye on that kid. Don't cause any trouble." "Yes, sir." After leaving the tavern, Black Snake made a few turns and entered the city. Compared to the hustle and bustle at the docks outside the city, it was frighteningly quiet inside the city. As early as 8 o'clock at night, the curfew in the city had been implemented. There was not a single person on the streets. In the entire city, only the city lord's mansion was still brightly lit. After half a month of preparation, the preliminary preparations for war were basically complete. More than 80% of the war resources had been delivered, and the 4 major armies were also ready to set off. In the city lord's mansion, after dinner, Ouyang Shua gathered all the generals for a pre-war meeting. The participants included by Qi, Shidakai, Hu Tsubing, Ma Chao, Lu Bu Alvaro, Lu Meng, and Jiasu. A map of Morocco was hung in the middle of the war room. Morocco was a long and narrow strip from north to south. All the areas that were marked on the map were the northwestern coastal areas. Only 4 of them were clearly marked. The capital, Rabat, was located to the north-northwest, right at the bottom of the arc. Not only were there 250,000 Imperial Guards stationed in the capital, but there were also 2 million players living there. There were more than 200,000 combat professional players, and more than 80% of the players in Morocco were gathered there. Less than 1,000 miles south of Rabat was the famous garden city of Casablanca. Of course, Casablanca was only a feudal city in the game. According to the information obtained by the Black Snake Guards, Casablanca's regular army did not exceed 50,000. Further south was the famous port city of Agadir, which was the largest territory in Morocco. The territory's army was already very close to a regular field army. Apart from these 2 large territories in the south, the other small territories had long since been annexed and no longer existed. The last enemy worth paying attention to was Tangier, which was located at the northernmost part of Morocco. Just like the base city, Tangier guarded the choke point of the Strait of Gibraltar. The territory was dominated by the navy, and the army supplemented it. At the moment, the navy in Tangier was not enough to pose any threat to the Mediterranean fleet. No matter how they looked at it, the most threatening and difficult to deal with was still the capital, Rabat. Although Rabat was a coastal city, the expeditionary army had crossed the ocean to come here. How to smoothly transport the army to land without being detected became the first problem they encountered in this war to destroy the country. After all, this was an army of more than 300,000 soldiers, not a small skirmish of 2,000 or 3,000. It was almost impossible to secretly transport them to Morocco in batches without being detected. After detailed calculations by the Division of Operations, with the current conditions of landing and fighting, sending 4 field army corps to the front lines was the best they could do at the moment. If they increased the number of troops, they would definitely not be able to hold on and would immediately be exposed. It was truly crazy to attack a country with such a great disparity in military strength. Because of this, the expedition this time would be personally led by Ouyang Shua, with Jia Su as the strategist, by Qi as the deputy general, Hu Tsubing as the forward general, and Alvaro as the rear general. The lineup could be said to be top-notch. After more than half a month of reconnaissance and discussion, the overall battle strategy of the expeditionary army to attack Morocco had gradually become clear. It could be summarized as advance by land and water, attack from multiple points, and directly attack the enemy's base. The military meeting at night was the final arrangement of tasks before the battle. Chapter 855. According to Gaia's latest rules, teleportation between the territory's teleportation arrays and the capital's teleportation arrays were prohibited during the war. Gaia's actions had actually lowered the difficulty of the war. If there were no restrictions on teleportation arrays, a country with a slightly larger population could simply teleport players to a city and block any attack with their sheer numbers. If that was the case, the war would be meaningless. In the war room, Ouyang Shuo announced the final battle deployment. According to the deployment, Bai Qi would lead the Dragon Stallion Army's 1st and 5th Corps and be responsible for attacking Rabat. Lu Bu would lead the 3rd Imperial Guard Corps and be responsible for launching the final attack on the capital. Hua Xiubing would lead the 3rd Imperial Guard Corps and be responsible for intercepting the enemy between Casabianca and Rabat. If nothing unexpected happened, the armies of the 3 territories would first teleport to Casabianca to reinforce Rabat. Of the Mediterranean fleet's 5 main formations, the 5th formation stationed at Friendship City and responsible for patrolling the Somali waters had already returned to the base city and would set up defenses at the mouth of the Gibraltar Strait to guard against the Spanish Invincible Fleet. The 1st and 2nd formations were responsible for attacking Rabat, while the 3rd formation was responsible for intercepting the Tangier Navy and setting up a second line of defense at the mouth of the strait. Finally, the 4th formation was responsible for land transportation and maritime escorts. The entire fleet was so tight that it was clearly stretched thin. Due to the limited number of troops, the expeditionary army would need to come up with a plan to successfully take Morocco. Strategist Jia Su's proposal won Ouyang Shuo's approval. In the war room, Ouyang Shuo was in no hurry to get Jia Su to reveal his plan. He was waiting for an important piece of information that would determine whether Jia Su's plan could be successfully implemented. It was at this moment that Black Serpent finally arrived. "Your Majesty, I've obtained the item." Black Serpent took out the map he had obtained from the tavern and handed it over. Ouyang Shuo took a look and nodded at Jia Su. Jia Su understood and began to explain his battle strategy to the generals present. Jia Su said, "There are 250,000 Imperial Guard stationed in the royal city of Labat, plus more than 200,000 combat mutants. If Labat is united, they will defend the city walls and fight to the end." In truth, the expeditionary army was not only unskilled in landing operations, but also lacked sufficient siege equipment. There was simply no way to start. If we attack by force, even the Dragon Stallion Army and Imperial Guard will pay a heavy price. Both Bai Qi and Hua Xiubing had solemn expressions on their faces. It was obvious that they agreed with Jia Su's judgment. The 2 immortal generals had been frowning ever since they returned from Morocco. The difficulty of the battle at sea was beyond their imagination. Jia Su's words were actually quite tactful. Based on Bai Qi's estimates, even with the Dragon Stallion Army and the assistance of the Imperial Guard, it was still unknown whether or not they would be able to successfully capture Rabat. In the game, there were no royal cities that were easy to conquer. If it weren't for the king's confidence, Bai Qi would have suspected that the expeditionary army was joking. Jia Su continued, "The sturdiest fortresses are often breached from the inside. A few days ago, the Black Snake Guards intercepted an important piece of information. There are 3 large fierce kerosene warehouses inside Rabat. This is our opportunity. Please explain the specific situation to everyone, Commander Black Snake." Black Snake nodded, got up and said, "The 3 fierce kerosene warehouses are located in the north, west, and south of the city respectively. Only the east of the city, where the palace is located, has no similar warehouse. The warehouses store a massive amount of fierce kerosene, one of Morocco's main exports. Just now, I obtained the detailed blueprints of these 3 warehouses as well as the patrolling arrangements. The Black Snake Guards are confident that they can cooperate with the army to detonate these 3 oil warehouses at the same time." The generals were all awed by this news. The generals were no strangers to fierce kerosene. It had already become a standard commodity of the Grand Xia dynasty's army. If the 3 oil warehouses were to explode at the same time, all of Rabat would be engulfed in a sea of fire that would never be extinguished. The city would certainly fall into chaos. Jia Su's calm gaze swept over the generals as he expressionlessly said, "At the same time as the oil warehouses are detonated, The aerial squads will also drop a large number of incendiary bombs on Rabat. The spies in the city will also coordinate with the arson to further create chaos. Generals, that will be our chance. A bloody light flashed in Bai Qi's eyes. Bai Qi did not expect that the refined military advisor before him would be so vicious and merciless. He was even more ruthless than him, the god of slaughter on the battlefield. There was no need to even think about it. Even if they managed to take Rabat, all that would be left would be an empty shell. The entire royal city would be reduced to rubble. The most important thing was the people in the city. As the fire spread, who knew how many people would suffer? Ruthless enough, Bai Qi inwardly evaluated. Even so, Bai Qi had no objections. The common people of an enemy country are better than the soldiers of the Dragon Stallion army. Once the generals had digested this news, Jiasu continued, Rabat is still a royal city. A single fire naturally won't be enough to destroy it. Generals, it would be best if you don't try to get lucky and sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. The fire will only intensify the chaos in the city, making it impossible for them to devote themselves to fighting against our army. In the end, whether we can take Rabat or not will depend on a real battle. The generals nodded. None of them were truly foolish. Even valiant generals like Ma Chao and Lu Bu, who had come from the Three Kingdoms and experienced countless battles, were seasoned veterans. After Jiasu finished speaking, Ouyang Shuo concluded, the current situation is like this. Once you come down, take advantage of the time it takes for the troops to assemble and explain everything to your subordinates. The map of the streets of Rabat that the Black Snake Guard painstakingly drew must be passed down to the battalion level. The Battle of Rabat will be different from the past. It will not be a conventional siege, and the main battlefield will be within the city. It will be a street battle that will be fought amidst the flames. This king does not wish for the troops to lose their way after entering the city and make a fool of themselves. In the sea of fire, the enemy can panic, but we can't panic. If necessary, each division will conduct a small-scale drill. Only by making solid preparations ahead of time will we be able to reduce the number of casualties. We obey your majesty's orders. The generals solemnly replied. Preparedness meant success, and unpreparedness meant failure. Ouyang Shuo had always adhered to the principle of not fighting a battle he had no confidence in winning. Ouyang Shuo had experienced as many battles and massacres as any general in history, but he had only one rule of thumb. Do your best to prepare for war. More often than not, when the preparations are sufficient, the battle will be won before it even begins, and vice versa. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.